The leader of this high-class family has a problematic daughter. She's arrogant, but has zero talent for magic. In this world, only those with talent and power are respected. The poor and the talentless are despised. Only those with some kind of strength have the right to survive. Even among nobles, the weak get discarded by their own families. Men need to be powerful, and women do too. You can be arrogant, you can have twisted desires, but if you're strong, none of that matters. So when the head of House Duplain realized his beautiful daughter was nothing but a pretty face and nothing else, he hired a talented, good-looking mage to teach Diella Duplain how to use magic. But the girl threw dirty water on the teacher, and declared that a filthy commoner rat wasn't even worthy of looking at her. Our protagonist Derek looked at her anyway. So the girl kicked him and told him he was only allowed to look at the soles of her feet. For most people, maybe that would be a dream come true. Our MC didn't like it one bit, and slapped the noble girl right across the face. "That's for staying quiet," he said coldly. "The girl is rich and important, and no one had ever done that to her. She just found out the first time hurts like hell." Diella slapped him right back and threatened that his life was over. What she got in return was an even harder slap. Derek said in an ice-cold, "Treat people with respect, and you'll get respect back. Noble arrogance knows no limits." So the girl screamed for her head butler, claiming a servant had assaulted her. Everyone rushed to the young lady's room, warning the boy that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. But the MC didn't back down. He pulled out his authorization. The family head had given him permission to use any method necessary to teach her. The only condition, there had to be a body left over. The girl's older brother heard about this, and confronted the boy later, furious. He had no right to touch a noble woman. Derek showed no regret, which only made the brother angrier. The MC simply said, "Your father allowed it." And as everyone knows, the head of the family's orders are absolute. So when the black-haired brother went to their father, demanding Diella be expelled from the family, the father told him, just once, that he had plans for her. And when the son tried to push back, the father gently reminded him that his orders were final. Remembering that, the black-haired brother backed off. The blonde brother later took Derek to Diella's childhood room and showed him that when she was young, she'd been sweet and cheerful. He didn't know exactly what had changed her, but somewhere along the way, growing up turned her into this. Derek spotted magic books among her old things and realized what was going on. There was also a painting the girl had made. It said a lot too. Derek made a promise. Diella would be fixed. That very same night, the girl was sleeping when she was suddenly jolted awake. Derek simply said she must be thirsty. This was the second time she'd been handled. Then the boy dragged her out of her room and took her far from the castle, saying this might be the last time too. When he threw her down, the girl had no idea what was happening. Even her father's orders had limits. Derek smiled for the first time and said, "I'm not here to teach you magic. I just enjoy beating arrogant nobles whenever I get the chance." Fear ran through her flat-chested little body. None of this made any sense. Derek made it clearer. Arrogant nobles with no talent like her get thrown out and shipped off to convents. So the MC figured he'd get to hear their screams before that happens. The girl still held on to hope that this was some kind of setup. But when she saw her own reflection in Derek's sword, pure survival instinct kicked in and she ran. If she could reach the forest, she could hide in the dark. Then a fireball lit up the distance. She recognized it instantly as level 2 magic. This kid was a high-tier mage, and judging by the look on his face, his intent really was to kill her. The MC's attack landed close beside her. "Missed the first shot," he said. "Lucky you." The girl kept running and the attacks kept closing in, but Derek stayed calm, commenting on things like how her agility didn't seem to match a failed noble who'd spent her whole life locked in her room. This forest, it was the same one from her painting. While he was thinking that, the girl tried to fight back with a rock, but Derek sliced it apart like paper. Diella had tried it anyway because she knew there was no way to outrun him, and Derek actually praised her fighting spirit. Though it must be pretty confusing getting praised by the person about to kill you. Derek tried to get her last words out of her. He asked why she was so obsessed with bloodline. That's when the girl broke. She screamed that it was all she had. A noble with no magic is this whole magic-obsessed world is bullshit. She tried harder than anyone and still nothing. No magic. Ever. If those were her last words, the MC said his goodbyes and wished her luck in her next life. He struck with his sword, boom, but the blade hit ice. Ice? How? That was definitely the girl's magic. After 15 years, the damn spoiled brat finally got magic. Derek praised her, apologized for his rudeness, and told her she needed to understand. This had been the only strategy that would actually work. The girl cried with everything she had. She'd finally done it. Before we find out what happens to our MC Derek, we need to understand how this commoner got here in the first place. About 8 years ago, there was this old man, the only one in this poor village who knew how to use magic, and nobody liked him for it. Magic is a noble's business. That's what everyone believed, but Derek never thought that way. The protagonist wasn't especially interested in learning magic, but the old man insisted he needed a disciple and took him in. The old man wanted followers, but couldn't get any because of his own arrogance. And the boy didn't care about any of that, so through winter and through summer alike, he trained and followed every piece of advice he was given. The boy showed signs of raw talent early on. Before long, the old man realized he was standing in front of someone with an incredibly powerful mana flow. Within just a few tries, the boy quickly learned how to conjure weapons out of his own mana. He managed to fire magic arrows that struck deep into a tree far in the distance. This beggar kid had actually done it. The old man wasn't about to let talent like that go to waste. Derek spent over a year training under the old man. Sometime later, the protagonist became a 1-star mage, having learned everything his mentor could teach him. Now, the old man tells him there's a wall to the north of Ibla, a place where noble boys reach 3 stars before they even come of age. But he says his student still isn't ready to compete with nobles. There's still so much he needs to learn. He also says magic comes down to blood. No matter how hard someone fights against that, in the end, nobles always come out on top. For his part, the protagonist thinks that's just an excuse the old man uses to avoid admitting his own failure. But that turned out to be the last piece of advice he'd ever hear from, because when the rain started falling that night, the old man never woke up. To Derek, it was obvious the old man was dead. He buried the man and noticed the body was wounded and malnourished. He also heard rumors that the old man had been beaten while trying to steal a 2-star magic book from a warehouse. I'm so damn sad, right? The old man died trying to steal a book for his student. The protagonist went cold inside, realizing just how unjust this world really was. Derek isn't even from this world, and it was in that traumatic moment that his legendary status window awakened. 4 years passed since then. In the city, Kodia Flameheart is the most talked about name around, a former lady of a noble house that had fallen from grace. Despite losing her Viscountess title, this beauty is a 3-star mage. While seeking work as a mercenary, she came across Derek, a commoner she immediately recognized had abnormal talent. So she took him under her wing and taught him that the rich and powerful would grow uneasy over his talent, meaning he needed to stay cautious even about his own gift. After some time under her guidance, Derek became capable of casting a level 2 spell, one that unleashed a powerful sound that scrambled the senses. All the mercenaries around them completely lost it. Trying to figure out what the hell that attack sound even was, Kodia didn't bother explaining. She just grabbed Derek and pulled him far away from there. Then the woman explained, dead serious. Nobles place enormous value on their privileges. A commoner with more talent than them is something they simply won't tolerate. They'll treat him as an enemy. The spell Derek learned was level 2. Now he was officially a 2-star mage. After all that, Kodia traveled with Derek and taught the boy everything she possibly could, until one day the county of Elvester appointed Kodia as a private tutor. That's not something you can turn down, so the two of them parted ways. A few months passed. Derek learned 2 more level 2 spells on his own. Now just 16 years old, staying in this city wasn't enough for him to keep growing. Later at the Belden Tavern, a tavern keeper named Jaden had a job for Derek. A request from House Duplain, the Grand Duchy. At the time, Derek only knew this family was famous in the region. He had no idea why they'd want to give a job to someone like him. But the man didn't care about the reason. He'd seen the gold coins and there were a lot of them. No matter what, this kid needed to take the job. With arguments that strong, Derek accepted. The man explained the task was simple. Clear out goblins from a region of the territory. Derek couldn't help but think a job this simple made things feel off. This had to be a trap. He wasn't going to Before leaving, the man begged, swearing there was no one else he could trust with this job. On top of that, They'd already paid 1 gold coin up front. So Derek was brought before the clients. A friendly-looking lord and lady and a mysterious girl. The mustached lord didn't like the idea nobody told him a boy this young would be the one chosen. He wasn't going to accept, but the hooded girl stepped in and insisted on hiring the boy. Later, out in the territory, the goblins were completely and utterly humiliated. Those red eyes of the boys were cruel and cold. Even when they tried to attack from behind, the boy was faster. He'd dodge then return the exact same favor. You like attacking from behind, then you won't mind getting the same treatment. Before long, the last of them was wiped out. Derek let them know the job was done. The 3 of them couldn't hide their shock. The boy really was that powerful. It seemed the hooded girl had ulterior motives when it came to Derek. Derek assured them there wouldn't be any more goblins showing up, so the old man needed to pay the rest of what was owed. And there it was, 2 beautiful gold coins. That's a fortune. Jaden and the boy could practically take a vacation with that. But then the old man interrupted the poor folk celebration, saying he had one more job to offer. And of course, that got their attention immediately. When the old man said he'd pay 15 gold coins right then and there, Derek didn't even blink. He simply said he'd do any job for that. So they headed to House Duplain's castle. Just as you'd expect from the rich and powerful, the place was massive and spotless. The old man finally introduced himself properly. The mustached lord was actually named Delon, the grand steward who served Duke Duplan directly. The woman from before was Katarina. That pretty, friendly face belonged to the head maid of the castle. Derek had known from the start that these people were lying about their identities. They'd claimed to be low-ranking staff, but their behavior never quite added up. So once everyone's lies were out in the open, the girl from before finally revealed it. She was the eldest daughter of House Duplan, Eastline Eleanor Duplan, and she wanted to hire Derek as a magic tutor. She led the boy into the castle. Along the way, Derek got a first-hand look at just how real the noble's reputation was. One of the maids was crying alone in a corner. Asseline introduced her father to Derek, the new teacher who'd tried to teach Diella. She'd brought him in from the country. The father seemed like a very busy man, but when Asseline mentioned she'd be leaving with Derek, the man asked the boy to stay. He wanted to speak with Derek. Duke Duplan asked what level Derek could manipulate magic at. The MC answered, 1 star. The man took off his glasses and warned him, "You have no reason to lie in this room." In that moment, Derek understood. Duke Duplan operates on a level where humility gets you nowhere. Derek is actually 2 stars, and from his clothes, the Duke figured out Derek was a mercenary, not someone fit to teach his daughter. But if Asseline had chosen him, the Duke had no reason to doubt her judgment. It was at that meeting that Derek took the liberty of asking Duke Duplan for permission to be aggressive, even violent, if that's what it took to teach the girl. That same day, he was introduced. Even the maids had no peace, constantly dodging flying plates of food. So Derek approached the spoiled girl, got humiliated by her, took a beating, fought back, and hit her right back. Then he hit her again and stood his ground against the staff, showing them her father's permission to use force. That night, he went to her room and made her believe she was about to be thrown out of the family and punished because of him. Pushed right to her limit, that's when her magic finally awakened. She cried hard. Derek tended to her wounds and told her the truth. Her type of magic wasn't what she thought it was. She was a wild type. The way she sensed mana was different from the traditional path. The girl had no idea any of this was true. Derek explained he'd figured it out from the forest drawing Diella had made. The way mana flows through nature was exactly what had guided her drawing. Mags with a wild school temperament are deeply connected to nature's mana. Starting tomorrow, Derek would teach her how to control mana and magic. For the first time in a long while, something happened that hadn't happened before. The girl thanked another person. Then they walked back to the castle together, talking the whole way. The next morning, Diella woke up and the first thing she did was test it. It wasn't a dream. She really could channel mana now. She could actually see it. At her bedroom door, a maid happened to be passing by. When Diella threw the door open, the startled maid ended up soaked. This was it. This was the end. The girl was known for taking revenge even on people who'd done nothing wrong. So the maid bowed and begged, just asking for a decent funeral. But get this. The girl just told her to be more careful, then walked off. The maid had never made it this far before. The other maids nearby were just as stunned. This was seriously strange. In another room, Derek was sleeping like a prince when suddenly a giant of a man started pounding on his door. Diala wanted to learn how to control her mana right. This was shocking to Delon. Had a miracle really happened overnight? Derek slammed the door in their faces and said he'd only work in the afternoon. Picture the spoiled girl's face getting told no. She went right back to pounding on the door. But Derek was used to noise like that and just went right back to sleep. Deep within the mansion of the Duplain estate, Reg paces through the sprawling halls. Along the way, he overhears the maids whispering that Lady Diala hasn't broken a single plate or even laid a hand on them today. They say she actually managed to manifest mana. Hearing this, Reg stops dead in his. He spins around, demanding to know what they just. Meanwhile, Duke Duplain silently signs documents in his study. He questions the rumor of her manifesting mana, and Valerian explains he already confirmed the details with both the butler and the maids. The Duke sighs, calling it a massive relief. Reg cuts in, warning them not to make rash decisions based on a single fluke. Valerian snaps back, telling him he should be praising his own sister for such an achievement instead. Duke Duplain merely watches, coldly analyzing the clash between them. Reg demands to know if their father has forgotten all her past outrage, arguing that one minor success is no excuse to let her remain in the house. The Duke simply continues working in silence, offering no reply. Soon, the hour of the Diala sits with her back turned completely to her tutor. Derek dryly asks if she is throwing a tantrum. She snaps back that she isn't throwing a tantrum, she is just incredibly angry. He scratches his head, warning her that throwing a fit won't change a thing. If she keeps acting up, he won't have a choice, because everything must happen in its proper order. Diala whips around in irritation, reiterating just how furious she is. In response, Derek glares at her with a bone-chilling stare to put her in her place. Instantly terrified, her attitude completely shifts, as she meekly admits she was indeed pouting, pulling up a chair. Derek sits down to begin the lesson. He explains that manifesting magic doesn't mean she can run around using it recklessly, warning her that things could easily spiral out of control. He notes that rest is just as vital as study, and tells her it is time to hit the books again, though Diala groans, complaining that she knew he would say that. Derek asks if she would prefer to learn the hard way instead. Memories of yesterday's brutal ordeal instantly flash through her mind. She quickly behaves, sitting upright and begging him to just forget she said anything. Derek explains that today's lesson is on mana control, and once she masters it, she can finally learn one-star magic. He points out that the wild, unstructured style of the jungle school isn't ideal for rigorous study, as it lacks the strict discipline of conventional institutions. Yet, in truth, he believes that Lola's style actually suits her perfectly. Her wild spirit thrives in that environment, and carrying the Duplain bloodline, she possesses undeniable natural talent. Hearing his words, she instantly beams with excitement. Her cheeks turning bright red, she eagerly asks if he truly believes she has talent. Derek confirms she has plenty of talent after all. Manifesting an ice barrier is no small feat. But he makes it clear that having talent and being a true genius are two completely different things. From afar, Rake overhears the entire conversation. He grows so furious that he actually grinds his. The next day, Diala appears at the door, claiming she can now direct her magic properly. She tries to use her ice magic again, but something still feels off, and the exact same thing keeps happening over the following. Diala refuses to leave him alone, trailing after him even during his. She tells him he should stay near the annex, since her father didn't lend him those spellbooks just for him to laze around. Derek agrees, stating that is exactly why he accepted the books in the first place. Diala then shares that she managed to make her mana flow just as he explained. Meanwhile, in one of the rooms, Valerian gazes out the window until someone opens the door. Derek asks if he was the one who and Valerian tells him to take a seat because they need to talk. He wants to know how things are progressing with. Derek explains that she is making decent progress, but it will still take some time before she can cast one-star magic. Valerian understands the situation, and mentions that his mother has traveled, but should return next week. He warns that she is not the type to go easy, because while the locals are good people, the nobility naturally despises commoners who rise above their station. Derek says he is already aware of that, and asks if that was the only reason he was. Valerian remains silent for a few seconds. He begins to explain that he is the next head of the Duplain household, a position that requires him to embrace and integrate every family, being sincere with each of them. But he confesses that this is incredibly difficult because people are complicated and intense. And while it would be great if everyone thought alike, reality simply doesn't work that way. Derek loses his patience and asks where he is going with this conversation. Valerian clenches his fist tightly. He turns around in tears, complaining that Diella simply doesn't want to play with him anymore. This sudden reaction completely shatters the serious mood in the room. Valerian begins to ramble, saying he still vividly remembers how she used to smile whenever she greeted him. He begs for help, asking if there is really no other way to win over his sister's heart. He complains that Derek is the only one she listens to. While outside, Diella can be heard shouting and searching for him. Valerian asks him to wait and shows him a doll, explaining that he learned how to sew from the maid. He asks if the doll doesn't look exactly like Diella, hoping it will make her feel her older brother's love. Derek stares at it and asks if he is trying to cast a curse on the girl. The heir of the house bursts into tears again, lamenting that he really is useless at these things. Later on, the lady of the house remarks that she has heard a great deal about. She says it seems they have finally found a truly competent teacher. She introduces herself as Morella Duplan and offers to send him a gift straight from her territory, if it is no trouble. But he immediately shuts her down, stating he has no ties to any noble family. Morella is visibly taken aback by his blunt response. In response, he explains that he is nothing more than a common. This revelation leaves the woman completely speechless. A week later, Azaleen mentions how incredibly glad she is to have brought him to the Grand Duke's residence. She expresses her wish to spend more time with her younger sister, but notes she must head back to Ebelstein to handle several pressing matters. Derek listens quietly, understanding the situation perfectly. Right then, Jaden claps a hand on his shoulder, emphasizing that she is placing her little sister's safety entirely in his hands. He urges her to wrap things up and return quickly, warning that hell will break loose if Pauline finds out. Left behind, the protagonist stands alone, watching the carriage fade into the distance. Suddenly, Azaleen realizes she forgot one crucial detail. She failed to mention that their mother is returning next. Jaden frowns, asking if that is really something to worry about. The problem is, her mother is highly. To put it bluntly, the woman is practically the goddess of wrath herself. In an instant, the scene shifts to her slamming her hand on the Duke's desk, demanding to know what kind of joke it is to hire a commoner as Dialla's tutor. The Duke groans at the noise, telling her to keep her voice, but she snaps back that the volume is not the issue, but rather the future of Dialla, her beloved youngest daughter. The Duke counters, reminding her she already knows he despises placing commoners in high positions as much as she does. He points out that no noble tutor managed to teach the girl a single thing, but Morella fires back, asking how he dared to hire a former mercenary of all people. The Duke argues that good magic tutors are hard to find, adding that Derek came highly recommended by Azaleen herself. Morella demands that the family must maintain a bare minimum of She suggests using her younger brother, Flam, who was busy before but now has free time. The Duke questions if she really wants to pull someone away from managing the territory just for private tutoring, warning that Ebelstein will fall into chaos if they act so recklessly. Morella loses her temper and screams, asking if he forgot that high society is a ruthless war zone. She declares that a tutor's reputation is everything, and Dialla cannot become a laughingstock when she makes her debut. At that exact moment, the study door swings open. Valerian steps in and tells his mother to calm down, reminding her she did not come here to pick a fight with his father. Morella snaps at him to stay out of it, warning that this matter is far too grave to ignore. Then Raig enters the room, agreeing with his mother completely. Hearing her son's support, her face twists into a malicious smirk. Raig argues that letting a commoner teach a noble is absurd, but concedes there would be no issue if the man actually proved his capability. He proposes to test this Derek personally, declaring he will settle the matter in a magic duel. However, the Duke cuts him off immediately, warning him that the man is a brutally skilled warrior. The Duke's response only fuels Raig's growing fury. So he shifts tactics, proposing they test Dialla herself instead. Valerian is instantly baffled, unable to comprehend where this sudden idea came from. Raig reasons that if this Derek is truly such an exceptional tutor, Dialla must have made incredible progress, and announces he will duel her himself to prove it. Duke Duplain is left entirely speechless, completely at a loss. Outside the room, Valerian rushes to catch up with his brother. He demands to know what madness possessed him to demand a magic duel out. Reg snaps back, asking if Valerian honestly believes Diala has changed, or if he has already forgotten all the chaos she caused in the past. Valerian counters that no matter what she did, Diala is still their sister. They share the same blood, and the family must protect her. Reg sighs in sheer frustration, scoffing at the mention of blood ties. Then he snaps, shouting that this very blood is destroying their family. And if she enters high society like this, it will ruin them all. In that instant, Valerian realizes the sheer gravity of the situation, and just how deeply his brother. Turning to leave, Reg declares that Diala has crossed every line, and the best option is to keep her locked away in the family estate. With that, he walks away, his expression completely shrouded in dark. Meanwhile, back in Derek's room, Diala bursts through the door suddenly, without warning. Surprised by her urgency, Derek asks what she is doing there so early. Without a word, she slams a letter onto the book he is reading. She warns him that if she loses the duel against her brother, Derek will be fired on the spot. The young man reacts calmly, noting that young Master Reg is already an experienced one-star mage, making it highly unlikely she will win. Infuriated by his coldness, Diala yells, demanding to know if that is all he has to say when his own livelihood is on the line. Derek answers bluntly that he is just a mercenary who does the job he is hired for and gets paid, and in the end, he has already been compensated more than enough. Stunned, she asks if he truly does not care about any of this. 1 week later, the Duplain family banner flies high above the arena. A crowd of nobles begins to arrive, making their way to the stands to watch the spectacle. Everyone bows in deep respect, greeting Duke Duplain the moment he appears. Watching the commotion from a distance, Derek remarks that the Duke has finally arrived. He offers a respectful bow to the family patriarch. The Duke notices Derek. Observing that the young man is completely calm and composed, showing no signs of nervousness, he reflects that keeping such composure under intense pressure is a rare trait. Confirming they absolutely cannot afford to lose a talent like Derek. Moments later, firm footsteps echo through the arena corridor. Rake enters the arena, his cloak billowing. He strides forward with grim resolve, knowing this is no ordinary test. Today, he will shatter Diala's pride once and for all. His sole purpose is to make his sister bitterly regret everything she has put their family through. On the other side, Diala walks out with calm resolve. She wears a hood to conceal her face. Just moments earlier, she had asked him if he truly cared about nothing as long as he got paid. Derek explains that she must have already noticed her mana flowing more smoothly, and even if she cannot cast one-star magic yet, it won't be long now. He says this is because she was born with a Duplain bloodline, prompting Diala to ask why he is suddenly bringing this up. Derek reminds her of his previous warning that survival in the wild depends entirely on one's own grit. Losing her patience, the girl demands to know why he is telling her this right now, but he remains silent. She admits she knows all too well that she is no star pupil. Even so, she insists she wants to keep learning magic from him and refuses to have any. At that, Derek pauses just before leaving. He pulls on his gloves and admits he knows nothing of etiquette or the rules of noble duels. But he guarantees he knows how to teach someone to win a fight and asks if she truly wants to claim victory. Diala remembers every humiliation and scathing comment she endured her entire life. Choking back tears, she replies that she wants to win, no matter. Now standing in the arena, Diala does not stand there as Reg's little sister, nor does she stand there as the youngest daughter of the Duplain. She stands there solely as Derek's only student and disciple. The two opponents face off. The butler clears his throat to draw their attention. He announces the duel will follow the official rules of the Edelstein High Mage Hall, and the first to trigger their protective barrier loses the match. And with that, the battle finally begins. This magic barrier activates automatically upon taking a heavy blow, neutralizing the opponent's attack. Derek muses on how nobles love to fight, realizing they must have money to burn to waste it on such a costly accessory that only lasts 10 minutes. Reg advances slowly, starting to gather his wind magic. The light breeze he whips up blows Diala's hood back. The wind concentrates violently into his hand. He unleashes the spell, thinking that today she will learn her place and crawl back to the family annex. With that, he fires a spiral of slicing wind straight at his sister. The attack closes in on Diala with blinding speed. She watches the incoming strike for a split second. Then she bolts as fast as she can to dodge it. Reg is taken aback by her reaction. Infuriated that she dares to run, he begins to concentrate his mana once more and unleashes another powerful blast of wind right at her. Diella merely glances back, beginning to analyze her brother's attack. Derek realizes that while he controls one-star magic well, he is a total amateur in real combat, wasting far too much mana by forcing the spell to curve. His gust of wind crashes directly into the wall of ice. Diella raises the barrier with breathtaking ease. Reg scoffs at it, thinking it is just raw, accumulated mana rather than real magic, and doubts she can stop his attack with such a cheap trick. He conjures 2 more spheres of wind in the air and decides he only needs to blow past that flimsy door. He primes the spell and aims straight for the girl. Diella recalls Derek's warning about how mercenaries fight differently from nobles, abandoning honor and rules to focus entirely on the kill. Since this brutal style violates the etiquette of noble duels, he warns her that she might face backlash if she wins this way. Even so, he promises he can craft a winning strategy for her and asks if she is on board. Diella agrees instantly, without a shred of hesitation. Back in the fight, she locks in with absolute focus. The instant the spell closes in, she leaps aside to dodge. In the mercenary world, there are always those who manage to win even when facing vastly superior opponents. These killers do not fight in civilized duels, but in raw, savage wars. Reg tries to redirect his attack mid-flight, but Diella slips away effortlessly. In war, survival means dominating the terrain and weaponizing absolutely every resource available to secure victory. Even the enemy's slightest distraction must be ruthlessly exploited. She channels her magic and rears up another wall of ice, pouring far more effort and concentration into it than she originally planned. Reg screams that the fight is already. Diella looks back immediately and sees a blade of wind tearing straight toward her. The impact explodes, kicking up a massive cloud of dust across the arena. Derek watches it unfold, his expression deadpan. Meanwhile, her mother stands up in a panic, screaming Diella's name. She demands that the butler stop the duel immediately before her daughter is mutilated. But Duplain holds his wife back and tells her to sit down, warning her that the clash is not over yet. Morella protests, arguing they all saw the blow hit the girl dead on. But the Duke points out that the general's protective magic circle has not even triggered. He glares at her tutor from a distance to gauge his reaction, and notices that Derek did not even flinch, proving he likely anticipated this exact outcome. Reg stalks through the settling dust. He is certain his strike connected, but finds it bizarre that the safety circle did not deploy. Hidden deep within the smoke, Diella crouches low. A small section of the wooden arena begins to crack. Out of nowhere, a spike of ice erupts, barely missing him. Reg leaps backward to dodge. He wonders if she is attacking from right beneath the platform. Under the Kelbram Hall rules, she forfeits the match if she steps off the platform, but the butler shakes his head, signaling that the move is legal. Reg realizes this doesn't count as leaving the arena, a dirty tactic no one ever anticipated. Suddenly, something catches his eye. Another ice spike, even larger, nearly impales the boy. In an instant, dozens of other spikes begin erupting from the ground. Reg knows it must be hard to aim blind without being able to see where he is, but she is just aiming to land a hit by any means necessary, completely discarding any noble etiquette. He calls out his sister's name. Diella glares coldly upward from beneath the arena floor. Her eyes glow with a menacing red light. Reg recalls seeing that exact look before, when her brother choked Derek with an eerie, unnatural calmness. He turns his head to the side. He knows Diella would never think of this on her own. This is definitely Derek's plan. He tears the button off his hood and tosses it aside. He warns that if that's how they want to play, he will match their strategy. Terrified, Morella asks if Diella really went under the platform. She demands to know what her husband will do to stop the fight, but Duplain replies that no rules have been broken, and that they will watch a little longer. He watches closely, highly intrigued by the turn of events. Meanwhile, beneath the arena, surrounded by ice spikes, Diella concentrates and stares straight up. She can perfectly see his mana flow. High above, Reg begins to gather his magic, but he must dodge quickly, realizing she always targets his feet whenever he tries to cast a spell, and he cannot lose. Like seconds later, he looks up, right toward the giant flagpole. Diella notices his mana flow has stopped. He must be planning something. No matter what, the instant he starts casting, she will strike with everything she has. Worried, the butler tries to call out to the young master. But the boy is already standing right at the top of the floor. He figures she won't be able to react to his manner from this distance. But casting a spell from so far away is impossible. There is only one way to make this work. He must destroy the entire platform without using, so he decides to fire a mana arrow instead. Derek doesn't show any reaction, but the mask begins to crack all over, and snaps right in half a moment later, bringing Derek down with it in the collapse. Marilla screams her son's name in sheer desperation. He stands up amidst the rising dust. He coughs heavily, but suddenly realizes something. Diella is walking straight through the smoke. So he points his finger right at her, and fires a mana arrow. The girl quickly darts her eyes away. Diella tries to defend herself from the oncoming attack, but her magic barely manages to leave her fingertip. She needs to act fast, because the arrow is already about. By a hair, she manages to dodge the blow, and Rake believes he has the upper hand at close, and that just one more magic arrow will end this fight. But out of nowhere, Diella lands a heavy kick straight to his chest. Rake crashes to the ground in severe pain. The girl grabs a handful of dirt from the ground, and throws it right into her brother's face, blinding him completely for the moment. With that, she rushes up to the top of the arena. Rake thinks she is resorting to kicks and dirt, because she is out of mana, desperately doing whatever she can. She is doing all this just to win, even knowing it is impossible, and he realizes this duel is meant to prove her worth. That is why he will give it his all as her brother. Back on the arena, Diella wipes her hand across her head. Blood drips down her chin. She needs to view this like brushstrokes on a canvas. Mana is her paint, and magic is her brush. She must gather all the paint floating in the air with her brush to create a complete picture. In that instant, Derek draws a thin line in the air. He demonstrates that this simple act is already magic itself. Diella is completely captivated by what she sees. Then, he lets that energy run wild. Diella closes her eyes to truly concentrate. She begins to draw energy from her surrounding, focusing on the painting metaphor. Instantly, she feels the mana vibrating at her fingertips. And now she will use this paint to begin her drawing. This is real magic taking shape. And just like that, Diella manages to forge a perfect. The butler watches the scene, utterly stunned. Marilla calls out to her husband in a panic, shouting that Diella is casting one-star magic. Rake realizes his sister has actually pulled off the feat. Diella commands the ice spear with pure, raw intuition. Meanwhile, RYG begins preparing a spell in his own hand. He thinks this changes nothing, confident he is still one step ahead in one-star magic. He plans to strike first to secure a swift, brutal victory. But Diella unleashes her attack a split second later, and Rake does the exact same, firing right back. The two spells clash violently mid-air. The collision unleashes a massive shockwave, kicking up a thick cloud of dust and wild energy. In a panic, Marilla screams her daughter's name, but a protective barrier has already been erected just in time. Slowly, the smoke begins to clear. Rake struggles to catch his breath, and Diella is equally exhausted. Yet Derek remains standing there, completely unfazed even after such a clash. 1 year earlier at the Duplain mansion, the secretary announces that a letter from the main estate arrived that morning. The subject seemed to be a mere social gathering. But in truth, the real target of that meeting was Diella. She sat right beside them, slumped dejectedly in her chair. Even witnessing this, the Duke showed absolutely no emotion. Back in the present, the girl suddenly gasps. She realizes the protective shield around her is vanishing. She realizes the protective barrier has just vanished. Further ahead, Rake is on his knees, completely drained of mana. The protagonist hangs his head, accepting his ultimate defeat in this duel. Unable to withstand the pressure, Diella breaks down. The Duke watches the entire scene unfold in silence from afar. Marilla begins to scream, ranting that such a dirty, vulgar display should not even be considered a real magic duel. But the Duke simply ignores her outburst, remaining dead silent. He remembers introducing himself to the former Duke as Raymond Oswald Duplain, declaring it an honor to serve and fight alongside him in the war. Back then, the former Duke mentioned hearing great things about his father, noting that Raymond inherited those exact same eyes burning with a hidden ambition, and Raymond simply thanked him for the compliment. Now, looking at Diella, the Duke sees that exact same look in her eyes. It strikes a chord deep within him, stirring his cold heart. He notes how much the girl's gaze is sharpened while the maids rush to swarm around her. They desperately try to soothe and comfort the young lady, but Diella shoves them all away. She takes firm, decisive steps to. The boy stands speechless in her presence. He merely congratulates her on her effort, and Diella hangs her head. The maids try once more to usher the girl back to her room. But Diella ignores their pleas and keeps walking. She heads straight toward her master. Derek stands motionless, staring at the girl for a few quiet seconds. Diella tries to hold herself together and look strong, but she breaks and bursts into tears again. Clutching her dress tightly, she confesses that she failed and lost the fight, and because of that, she must apologize to. The protagonist shows no surprise at all. He simply rests his hands on his knees and slowly stands up. He tells her it is fine, and that losing is just a part of life. The key now is to channel that anger to grow and become even stronger. Hearing those words, the girl stops crying for a brief moment. But immediately after, she completely breaks down, sobbing uncontrollably. Her cry of pure anguish echoes across the entire duplex. A moment later, Morella comes rushing over. She calls out to her daughter in sheer desperation. She kneels by her side, crying that her daughter has suffered far too much in this place. She tries to calm the girl down, telling her everything is fine now, and they need to treat those wounds immediately. The mother stands frozen, watching her daughter walk away. She wipes her face and dries her tears with a piece of cloth. In that instant, Derek decides to turn his back and begins to leave. But the woman refuses to let it slide and chases after him, fueled by. She starts screaming, calling him a wretched scoundrel and declaring that teaching her daughter one-star magic means absolutely nothing. Without a second thought, she lunges forward and slaps him across the face. She rants that he only taught her cheap tricks, dragging her daughter's reputation through the mud and reducing the Grand Duke's heir to such a vulgar display. Blinded by hatred, she strikes him with another sharp slap. She screams that trash like him has no right to exist in her world, and demands he learn to respect those who actually. She claims everyone there has dignity and appeals to her husband, arguing he must have seen that this was no real magic duel. But to her absolute shock, the Duke himself intervenes and slaps his wife across. He firmly tells her she has crossed the line, and asks if she fails to see that she is the only vulgar one here. The woman is utterly baffled and demands to know why she's being treated this way over a mere commoner. Her husband agrees he is indeed a commoner, but reminds her that first and foremost, the boy is their daughter's teacher. He adds that no true parent would ever behave so shamefully in front of a child. The Duke then turns to the boy and apologizes, noting that everyone has a different way of showing love for their children. The protagonist quickly analyzes the situation in silence. He replies that it is fine and there is no need to worry, prompting Raymond to invite him to his office to speak in private. The two turn and head toward the office together. Meanwhile, Morella is left behind, seething with rage over what just happened. Once in the office, the Duke acknowledges the young man's work, stating he took exceptional care of the girl. He explains that as the lord of the estate, he must reward him properly, promising the absolute maximum the kingdom allows for a commoner. Then the Duke gets straight to the point, and asks if he wants to receive the knowledge of 3-star magic. Derek instantly realizes the Duke hit the bullseye on exactly what he desires. The man reads him perfectly and offers the ultimate deal. After all, he is a 5-star mage and the Grand Duke of this nation. Since an opportunity like this only comes once, the protagonist accepts the offer on the spot. The Duke then issues a warning, stating that in Ebelstein's high society, this alone will not be enough to survive. The young man replies that Duplain has plenty of instructors who can guide Diana, and now that she has the basics down, she will progress rapidly. But the Duke disagrees, arguing his daughter no longer needs a mere instructor, but a true mentor. He refills his pen with ink as he continues his train of thought. He remarks that despite being a commoner, the young man harbors an ambition so grand that most wouldn't even dare to dream of it. The Grand Duke had never spoken this much to him. Even so, he reads the youth effortlessly, knowing his plans stretch far beyond 3 or even 4 stars. This sharp perception from the nobleman tightens the tension as he concludes the conversation, warning that if the young man truly wishes to climb that high, he cannot afford to waste his time staying in this place for long. He prepares to take his leave. Derek nods in agreement, and the Grand Duke acknowledges his ambition, but makes it clear he must remain Diala's tutor for the time being. That is when the Duke grants him access to the 3-star magic spells. exactly as they previously agreed. The library doors finally swing open. Derek walks calmly through the silent towering aisles. He pulls one of the massive volumes from the shelves. He studies each complex magic circle with intense focus. He commits the intricate designs to memory with astonishing speed. Even Derek finds his own rapid comprehension incredible. Countless mags spend their entire lives scraping by just to get their hands on a single 2-star grimoire. Yet right here, laid out before him, are multiple 3-star works. With a treasure trove like this within reach, he has absolutely no reason to leave the Grand Duke's estate anytime soon. He knows that once Pelin finds out about this, she will be furious later that Diella struts up to him, proudly boasting about finally becoming a 1-star mage. Derek merely nods, dryly reminding her that she has only managed to cast magic a single time. She complains about his cold, demanding to know why he cannot just be happy for her progress. But Derek retorts that her success is not his achievement. She grumbles that he is incredibly difficult. But Derek admits she has improved significantly over the last 3 days. He even teases her, saying her eyes looked ready to pop out from crying so much from sheer exhaustion. Diella tries to play it cool, denying she was crying and making up an excuse about getting dust in her eyes. She grumbles that her father should have warned her about his decision sooner, as she genuinely believed Derek was about to be thrown out of the estate. Derek tells her it is time to begin training, since she is developing fast and will soon be ready to learn actual 1-star spells. Diella spins around wanting him to clarify what he means by her fast development. He explains that her growth is highly unusual, especially considering how little time has passed since she first manifested mana. Thrilled, she asks what they will train next, suggesting they try a chantless magic arrow or that powerful wind blade Rake used. She also brings up the ice spear, believing she can match Rake's level with enough practice. But Derek instantly crushes her excitement, telling her she will only be training basic ice manifestation. She protests immediately, demanding to know why she cannot start learning 1-star spells right away. He explains there are several reasons for this, but ultimately mastering the basics is always what matters most. In short, it all comes down to mana control, and despite her whining, Diella ultimately yields to his decision. She mutters that if her tutor says so, she has no choice, admitting she got her hopes up for nothing, thinking she was about to cast real combat magic. A moment later, she narrows her eyes and glares at Derek suspiciously. She asks why he is staring at her like, demanding to know if there is something on her face. Derek dismisses it, explaining he was just surprised to see her listening so quietly and being so obedient. Diella turns away, her face flushing bright red as she claims she has respected and obeyed his every word since their training began. Derek just stares at her, highly amused by such a blatant lie. After all, she threw dirty water on him twice. She asks if he still remembers, quick to change the subject. She remarks on how great the weather is, and how practicing magic seems like pure fun. Derek merely sighs, a faint smile playing on his lips. Night falls over the estate, and Diella collapses to the ground, exhausted and gasping for air. Derek mentions hearing that her schedule is about to get a lot more demanding. She sits up, and notes that he already knows. She explains that her etiquette and general education classes start next week. Derek calls it a positive step, noting that she has mastered 1-star magic and will now receive the proper training of a true noble. But Diella complains about every single subject, questioning why she even needs to learn this, and wondering how Aslan ever survived such a grueling routine. Derek replies that this is exactly why they call Aslan the Flower, and why she rules the center of Ebelstein High Society. Diella insists she only wants to study magic, and Derek tells her to stay focused on that, since the Duke hired him, and they still have plenty of time to. But she worries, asking if there is a risk someone might throw him out just to end their lessons. Diella explains that while her father accepted, her mother is not the type to sit back and do nothing. He asks why the madam would want to expel a tutor, and Diella answers that her mother fears his lessons will tarnish her dignity as a noble. After all, even after seeing the duel, his style is a far cry from what the nobility considers. Derek dismisses the concern, saying it is no great issue. He assures her that putting the madam's mind at ease is simpler than she thinks, as they only need to eliminate the source of her anxiety. Diella is left utterly confused by his words. The next day, Morella walks through the manor, her expression thoroughly grim. She wonders how her daughter managed to find such an utterly unsuitable tutor. She begins to picture the man teaching her daughter how to kidnap people using brutal mercenary tactics. Or the young Diella turning into a complete animal once she enters high society. Morella's head begins to throb just imagining these disastrous scenarios. She questions how a commoner could possibly teach her daughter, because even if her husband accepted the situation, she is still the mistress of this estate. She decides she must find a way to resolve this herself. At that moment, Diella calls out to her. The woman thinks to herself that, despite everyone saying her daughter is still far too childish, she deeply loves the way the girl usually runs into her arms with a bright smile. But none of that happens as the madam is jolted from her thoughts. She opens her eyes to the reality before. Diella executes a flawless, elegant bow and politely asks if her mother slept well. Morella stands frozen, completely shocked by her daughter's behavior. Diella explains she could not leave the annex sooner because she was treating her training wounds, apologizes for not speaking with her earlier, and announces she must now head to piano practice. Morella simply accepts her daughter's word, at a total loss for how to. Diella says her goodbyes and mentioning that her study schedule is incredibly tight. Morella seizes the moment to ask if her etiquette classes are indeed starting next week. Diella confirms, adding that thanks to her mother's consideration, she hopes to learn a great deal. With that, she turns on her heel and, on her way, a maid panics and drops everything she is carrying onto the floor. Diella stops and asks if she is hurt. The woman is left in absolute shock by the girl's sudden change in attitude. The rest of the maids watch in silence as Diella walks away. In a noble district of Ebelst, a young lady remarks that the salon feels much livelier and filled with laughter. She admits she was genuinely worried about Aislinn during their last meeting, as she seemed quite downcast. Aislinn smiles and replies that she never intended to give that impression. She explains that most of the problems keeping her awake at night have been resolved, so she is feeling much better now. Alente, the second daughter of the Belmiard, calls it a relief and mentions a rumor that Aislinn actually left the noble district to save someone. Aislinn appreciates the concern, but explains she was actually busy looking for a magic tutor for her younger sister. Alente finds it curious, and wonders just how incredible this tutor must be to make Lady Duplain search for him in person. Denise, the second daughter of the Veltz family, joins the conversation and asks if this tutor is for Lady Diella. Aislinn confirms, sharing that she saw Diella at the mansion recently, and that she has become so polite she is barely recognized. She adds that the girl has even reached 1-star level, and her posture was so elegant it made Aislinn feel she needs to work harder herself. Denise finds it strange that the Duplain family is no longer hiding Diella, but agrees that this tutor must be extraordinary. Aislinn explains that although he lacks a noble title, he is highly competent, making it well worth going to the Belden Mercenary Guild herself to hire him. Both noble women are shocked to hear that the tutor in question is a mercenary. Alente searches her memory and remembers that the girl they are discussing is still Diella, the very same girl who drove her family chef to quit his job with the Duplains. She finds it impressive that a tutor managed not only to tame that violent girl, but also to turn her into a 1-star mage. Thinking of this, a smile creeps onto her face. She admits her curiosity and demands to know the man's name. After all, if he managed to civilize Diella, he is bound to become highly famous, so she wants to know his name now. Aislinn answers casually that his name is Derek. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Diella speaks with her mother and explains she was studying etiquette on her own, but found it too difficult to learn alone. Morella comments that she finds her daughter's self-study efforts admirable. Diella counters that despite her efforts, Derek was the one who taught her the most, prompting Morella to ask what on earth was so difficult that she needed him. The girl replies that almost everything is and she can only do things properly now because of Derek. Morella grows irritated as she realizes this man's name finds its way into every conversation. Losing her patience, she wonders how many more times she will have to hear her daughter speak this Derek's name. Morella cannot fathom what Derek did to Diella, but she decides she cannot let this slide and must take action. She recalls the maids constantly gossiping about how unusually generous Diella has been to the household staff. In a matter of mere weeks, the girl's behavior has completely transformed. It is a staggering shift, and the only other person Morella has ever seen change so drastically is Aislinn. She reasons that perhaps her daughter truly is putting in the effort to carry herself like a proper young noble. A few days later, in the late afternoon, with a spellbook spread open on the ground, the training begins. Derek shuts his eyes, channeling every ounce of his concentration. He begins to shape and gather mana in the palm of his hand, but he grits his teeth as strain and frustration warp his focus. The energy spikes violently, and he loses control of the sapped of all strength. His body collapses onto the ground in sheer exhaustion. He looks back at the sound of approaching footsteps. Rake appears and apologizes for interrupting his training session. Derek pulls himself up and asks what brings him. Rake sits on the grass and explains that he wants to talk about. He spots the book and notes that it is a 3-star grimoire, which Derek confirms. Adding that the Duke lent it to him personally, Rake is visibly taken aback by the revelation. Derek quickly adds that the contents are still far beyond his current level. But there is no harm in studying ahead. Rake remembers the day his father called Derek a true mage. He smiles and says the young man's dedication is truly admirable. Derek cuts straight to the chase, asking what Rake wanted to discuss. Rake admits it is a bit awkward, but he wants to know what girls her age actually enjoy. He suggests that perhaps she would like a doll made in her own likeness. Derek instantly pictures Valerian's bizarre doll and flatly replies that it is a terrible idea. The two begin walking back to the mansion. And Rake notes that things are changing around the estate and that he must accept this new reality. He confesses he was likely turning a blind eye or simply running away. But seeing Diala's transformation made him realize he can change too. He knows this is all thanks to Derek's influence and makes sure to express his gratitude. Derek merely nods in silence, accepting the thanks. Rake remarks that Diala's style of magic feels different, comparing it to painting the walls of a room in a completely unique way. Derek reflects that genius always shows its worth, and that Rake definitely inherits the sharp Duplain bloodline to have noticed such a subtle difference. He explains to Rake that Diala utilizes the mana control technique of the Jungle School. He explains that how one wields mana varies from person to person, and that she will soon reach a level where she can study independently without any guidance. He concludes that past that point, a teacher's interference would only hinder her natural development. Rake agrees, confident that when that moment comes, she will undoubtedly shine on her own. 2 months pass after that conversation. Diala asks what those flowers are, and the maid replies that she brought them to put in her hair. The girl comments that the scent is wonderful, making it feel like spring arrived long ago. In that time, she fully masters 1-star magic and grows closer and closer to the household staff. She feels as if she wasted her entire life and she knows this complete turnaround is all because of Derek. The maid asks if today is magic class since she looks so happy, and Diala confirms with a smile. She even thinks of saving the leftover flower as a gift for Derek, but suddenly the flowers slip and crash to the floor. Diala stands completely frozen, paralyzed by what she just heard. She asks what Derek could possibly mean by that. The young man replies that she heard him perfectly. He says he has nothing left to teach her. He explains that things work just like the seasons and spring never lasts forever. Later in the study, Derek speaks with the Duke, noting that he must have realized Diala's talent belongs to a freeform style, much like nature itself. He explains that if he keeps meddling in her training, he will only end up limiting the girl's potential. The Duke remarks that, by the looks of it, there is no longer any reason for him to stay at the but despite his blunt words, the Duke looks deeply saddened. He stands and walks to the window, noting how the mansion completely transformed since the young man arrived, and how his daughter finally managed to grow because of him. The Duke confesses that he was so focused on governing his lands that he failed to be a good father, but now he feels a massive weight lifted off his shoulders. He then asks when the young man intends to leave. Derek replies that he heard Azaleen is visiting the mansion before returning to Ebelstein, and he plans to hitch a ride with her. The Duke agrees and asks him to return the library key now. But the young man says he still needs to finish reading a few books and will hand the key to the head butler afterward. But Raymond flatly refuses, demanding the key back this very instant. Derek stares in silence at the book tucked into his waist. The Duke turns away and says that if he has nothing else to say, he may leave. The young man quietly stands up and gives a parting bow to the Duke's back. As he walks through the mansion hallways, he runs into Diala, who complains that he showed up out of nowhere and is now leaving just. The young man says there is no other way, and Diala replies that she knows he won't listen, but she has to say it anyway. She looks into his eyes and asks if he can't just stay. Derek doesn't answer, only walking slowly toward the girl. He explains that he will return to mercenary work to study more about and suggests she come to Ebelstein once she turns 15 and grows stronger. He promises they will meet again, adding that if he refines his own skills by then, he will be able to teach her new things. Diella complains that he is irritating because he always says the right thing, leaving her with no way to argue back. Later, night falls over the mansion, and the girl sleeps fitfully, breaking into a cold sweat. She remembers the endless nightmares of people cursing her name and how she had to endure all of it completely alone. Suddenly, she jolts awake, letting out a terrified scream, gasping for air immediately after. Slowly, she realizes it was just another nightmare. The maid opens the bedroom door and asks if everything is all right, explaining that she heard a scream and got. In that instant, Diella begins to think, wondering if she should go back to her old ways, beating the maid and smashing plates to cause trouble, because that is the only way Derek would be forced to stay there with her. The maid presses on, asking if she is feeling unwell. Diella bites her lip and immediately abandons that selfish idea, answering only that it was nothing. She says she is fine and tells the maid not to worry, promising herself she will never act like a spoiled brat again. The next day, inside the carriage, Isoline mentions she will drop him off near the commercial district, telling him to say his goodbyes quickly, as the journey is about to begin. Derek looks back immediately, observing every single person he lived with and bonded with in that mansion. Valerian asks if he is really leaving, and Derek confirms it, saying he needs to go home. Reg comments that life in the mansion was far from easy and that he worked incredibly hard, making it clear that if he ever needs anything, he just has to send word and they will help however they can. Derek thanks them all with a nod, but his gaze ultimately lands on Diella. The girl asks why he is staring at her, snapping that if he thinks she is going to beg him to stay, he is dead wrong because she is no longer a child. Derek replies that it was a great honor to be her teacher, and though he is no longer officially her, he hopes she never forgets the magic she learned by his side. Diella fires back, saying she will keep telling everyone he is her teacher, just to deny him a single moment of peace. Derek only offers her a smirk. That smile stirs the girl's emotions even more, making her turn her face away to hide it as she tells him to take care and not get hurt out there, adding that she is a big girl now and can take care of herself. Those words trigger an old memory for Derek, back when he said the exact same thing in the past. Back then, his master simply hugged him tight, telling him to take her advice seriously. Back in reality, Derek looks at the girl and calls out to Diella. He places his hand on her head and tells her she doesn't need to grow up so fast. The girl looks away, her eyes brimming with tears. She breaks down, sobbing the moment he begins to walk away. At the last second, she shouts Derek's name and waves, reminding him they will see each other again soon. The protagonist gives one last bow before stepping into the carriage. After all, their next meeting already has a playset, Ebelstein. Later, in the commercial district, the door to a rowdy tavern slams open. Inside, Pauline lands a heavy punch square on a man's face, while the rest of the mercenaries cheer and shout, fueling the brawl. She stops what she is doing, looks at the door, and calls out to the protagonist. In that instant, Derek feels like he is finally back in his true home. Jaden pours some honey wine, explaining that while nobles drink this stuff with fancy airs, the welcome drink is on the house since Derek likes it. Pauline looks at him and asks if he was always this pale, or if he ended up that way after living among the nobles. She mentions that when she heard he became a magic instructor, she also heard those nobles are always using drugs, and demands to know what really happened out there. Derek brushes it off, saying he just worked hard and has nothing particularly interesting to share. Pauline complains, saying he is already talking like a stiff, proper. As Jaden hands out the drinks, the girl grumbles that she went through absolute hell working all alone while he was away. The tavern owner chimes in, saying that at the very least, the trip must have brought in good money, and asks if they paid him well. Derek replies that he ended up receiving something far more valuable than gold. He places a spell book on the table, leaving them both wide-eyed, unable to believe they are looking at a 2-star grimoire. Derek smiles and says no, that they are actually 3-star spells. The two panic, asking if he stole it, and warning him that he could lose his head if he gets caught. Derek calms them down, explaining it was a gift from the Grand Duke himself. Pauline tells him to quit lying, and jokingly asks if the Grand Duke doesn't need an archery instructor too. As night falls, Derek asks if the tavern has received many commission requests lately, but Jaden finds it strange, asking if he already plans to take on a mission on his very first day back. Protagonist confirms, saying he wants something simple, like a light hunt just to shake off the rust. Jaden laughs and says they are always short on mags, so work will definitely not be lacking. The protagonist accepts and announces he will start tomorrow, first thing in the next morning. The group's carriage hits the road early. Deep in the forest, Pauline runs to lure away several massive monsters. But working as a team, they quickly bring the beast down one by one. Derek takes the opportunity to test his body, proving his magic swordsmanship remains sharp. With the job done, the day ends with the exhausted group riding back in the carriage. They set up camp along the way to rest but in the dead of night, Derek slips away in silence. Walking alone toward the edge of the forest, he attempts to focus his 3-star magic in the dead of night. Slowly, a small crystal begins to take shape in his hand. But the process spirals out of control, triggering a violent. Derek hits the ground, realizing that while 2-star spells come easy to him now, the next level is a different beast entirely. The barrier to reaching the 3rd star remains a massive wall. Time passes, and back at the tavern, the bitter cold finally hits with full force. The door swings open and the two step inside, desperate to escape the freezing air. Jaden remarks that it must be nice to be young, seeing how they made it to the Kent Mountains and back unscathed in this miserable weather. He adds that only 2 lunatics like them would bring back a harpy's head in a raging storm like this. Derek accepts the compliment, while Pauline admits she feels much better inside the warm tavern. Jaden tells them that since they work hard, they can rest tomorrow, as there is only one perfect job left, and it is a simple, highly paying task, though it might require some heavy physical labor. The next day, Derek walks toward the job, turning over Count Belmiard's request in his head. At the end of the day, the noble family is looking for a commoner to help with combat practice, which means they need a living punching bag. The plan is simple. He just has to take a beating, take the coin, and leave. Later, the young noblewoman, Alenta, walks through the grounds flanked by the family butler. She asks who her opponent is today, and the butler replies that they hired a commoner for her to practice her offensive magic on. Alenta finds it odd, and questions if the plan is really just to fight some random commoner. The man explains that this is part of her training, and that the guy was promised a handsome reward, so she can unleash her full power without any guilt. The girl agrees, thinking this session will be nothing more than beating down a nobody. She knows she will soon become a 2-star mage, and the gap in power between them is a vast chasm. Arriving at the training arena, Derek is already warming up for the fight. The girl approaches him and asks if he is her opponent for today. The protagonist politely introduces himself to her. The young noblewoman gives her name, though she can't help but feel she has heard his name somewhere before. The instructor calls them to the arena, while Alenta watches, wondering if he is even a mage at his young age. She begins to stretch and prepare herself before the fight begins. She asks if he at least knows the basic etiquette of a magic duel. The protagonist calmly replies that yes, he knows the rules. The girl then tells him to hold on as long as he can, because she wants to get this over with quickly. She says she will see what he, but warns that if she blasts him out of the ring with a shockwave, it will all end in the blink of an eye. Derek asks with absolute composure just how much resistance she actually needs him to show. The girl bristles, demanding to know what kind of ridiculous question that. The protagonist explains that he only wants to know how much he should hold back and endure her attacks to make her training useful. The instructor merely watches the boy's audacity and shakes his head in disapproval. The girl lets out an arrogant sigh. She scoffs at his strange way of talking and repeats that he just needs to endure as much as he can. Derek shrugs and agrees, since that is how she wants it. In that instant, both of them begin to manifest their magic. She almost praises him for mastering 1-star magic at such a young age, but decides he is far too arrogant to deserve it. Wasting no time, she casts her spell and fires it straight at him with everything she has. Derek stays focused and dodges the attack with ease. The blast flies right past him and explodes, obliterating the arena wall behind. Alenta watches, deeply impressed by his evasion. The protagonist keeps his rhythm and dares her to bring on the next attack. This infuriates the noble girl, making her realize he actually has the skills to back up his confidence. Even so, she knows the gap in their power remains massive. Suddenly, several mana arrows begin to sprout from the ground. The projectiles float and begin to orbit around her. She points and unleashes the barrage straight at the protagonist. Derek reacts instantly, deflecting the magic with a blunt strike of his elbow. The spell ricochets and flies right back toward her, but she reacts quickly, altering the trajectory of each projectile and shattering them all in midair. She is stunned that he can manipulate a simple spell with such brutal precision. The instructor watches, thinking the boy's level of control is incredible for a commoner, confirming the rumors of him being a seasoned mercenary are true. Alente admits she underestimated her opponent and begins channeling a much stronger spell. This time, she decides to go all out. Derek realizes she has changed her strategy. Her plan now is not to hit him directly, but to demolish the entire platform beneath his feet. The girl finishes her incantation and conjures she unleashes the fire, which surges rapidly toward the protagonist. He looks at the massive scale of the attack and realizes dodging is impossible. With no other choice, he raises an energy shield that absorbs the impact of the massive blast. A thick cloud of smoke rises and spreads across the combat arena. Derek steps out of the smoke, dispersing his but before he can even catch his breath, he is caught completely off guard. The young noble is already right in front of him, poised for her next move. She readies an ice spear at point-blank range, a distance that rules out any chance of dodging or raising a new shield. Cornered, the protagonist snaps his fingers, thinking her talent is freakishly good. A blinding flash of light erupts from his hand right in front of her face. The glare is so intense it leaves her completely blinded for a few seconds. Blinded, she spins around, desperately wondering where he went. But she can still react if she focuses entirely on sound. Suddenly, something grazes her neck. Alente gasps in shock. There was no sound at all. As her vision begins to clear, she sees the protagonist with his magic active. He unleashes a barrage of attacks straight at her. She barely manages to dodge She realizes he used an illusion spell to silence the sound. Anticipating she would rely on her hero, that first grazing blow was nothing but a warning. Anger flares inside her. How dare he go easy on her? The protagonist keeps firing his spells without pause. Acting fast, she controls her own magic to defend herself. But panic sets in as she realizes he is closing the distance. A confident smirk crosses her face. After all, rapid casting is her specialty. The moment she releases the energy from her hand, this fight is over. But the protagonist moves first, shifting his stance. He stomps his foot violently onto the ground. She watches, utterly baffled by his move. Suddenly, a surge of lightning erupts from the ground. She cannot comprehend how he unleashed that magic so fast. Desperate, she throws her hands up to shield herself. Watching from afar, her master is stunned, unable to read the flow of his energy. The impact sends Alente crashing to the ground. She smiles, finding him far more interesting than she ever imagined. She admits she underestimated him at first, even thinking he was a fraud. She rises to her feet and stands before the protagonist. She bows deeply, showing respect for the incredible display of power. She offers him her full gratitude for the fight. Then, she retaliates with the exact same lightning stomp spell. Derek merely shields his face as the attack charges toward him. He controls the magic surrounding his body with staggering precision, and redirects the attack straight back at the girl. He leaps immediately after giving her absolutely no time to react. She freezes in sheer panic, completely helpless. But right at that moment, the bell begins to toll. Her master interrupts the duel just in time. With that, Derek aborts his attack and lands on his. He praises the girl, telling her she did a good job. Alente is frozen, completely at a loss for words. A little later, the two talk in a lounge area. She remarks that he is an excellent mage, but Derek brushes it off as nothing special, and praises her impressive agility instead. Alente notes that he seems highly experienced in this world and mentions hearing he is a commoner, so he must be pushing himself to the absolute limit to get this far. Derek confirms this, explaining that he has to, since his plan is to survive as a mercenary. Alente says she respects hard workers, but warns him that her master, that old man, does not seem to like him at all. She advises Derek not to let his guard down while in that man's crosshairs. The girl thanks him, saying she learned a lot, and mentions she has another fight at the Rosier Hall where she might now secure a major victory. Derek replies that with her skills, she has absolutely nothing to worry about. But Alente explains she is not worried about ordinary, but rather the one person she is desperate to defeat. That person is Lady Eislein of the Duplin family. She bids the protagonist farewell, telling him he is dismissed and free to go. Derek nods and begins to walk away. Watching him leave, Alente tries to remember where she has heard that name before. Then, it finally clicks. He was Diala's private tutor. The girl sprints as fast as she can and grabs the protagonist's arm before he can escape. She demands to know if he is indeed the mercenary who tutored Diala. At nightfall, the two sit down to talk near a fireplace. Alente gets straight to the point, declaring she will do whatever it takes to defeat Aiz. She confesses she has not reached level 2 yet, and needs to get there before the fight. But if that is impossible, she at least wants to beat Aisline in a pure clash of magic. Derek smirks, noting her intense competitive streak. The girl admits it might just be stubbornness, but defeating Aisline is her absolute priority. She wants it so badly that she does not care if she has to resort to underhanded tactics, or she confesses that harboring jealousy is ugly, and that is exactly what she felt toward Aisline. To make matters worse, talking behind her back or looking for flaws never, because Aisline was always kind and welcoming to everyone. Derek listens in silence, then asks why she decided to reveal all this to. The girl calmly sets her cup down on the table. She explains that by exposing her darkest side, she wanted to prove her absolute sincerity, and now she has some critical questions to ask. Derek nods, giving her the floor. The girl points out that since he lived at the Duplan estate, he must know exactly how powerful Aisline really is. And he has also just witnessed the extent of her own abilities. So she asks him directly, which of them is the stronger one? She demands to know what she must do to defeat Aisline. Derek hesitates for a moment before admitting that Aisline is on an entirely different level. But looking into her eyes, he realizes that sometimes, a person's deepest desperation is written plain as day. The girl standing before him did not ask this question just to hear empty praise. She is desperate enough to seek answers from a mere mercenary. After another moment of silence, he delivers the brutal, she will never defeat Aisline. She bites her lip, but refuses to. She demands victory at any cost, no matter how impossible. She reminds him that he successfully turned Diala into a real maid, and she demands to know if he can do the same for her to help her crush Aisline. Derek answers that there are ways, but confesses that one major obstacle stands in their path. She sits down, declaring they are finally speaking the same language, and demands to know what is holding him back. First, he asks if she has any idea what his training methods for Diala actually looked like. Alente admits she does not know the detail, but fires back that she will do absolutely anything to win. Derek then points out his second concern. She knows exactly what he is, a mercenary. Alente cuts him off, stating she does not care if people whisper behind her back. She is deadly serious. Her goal is to command respect throughout the entire. To her, nothing matters if she cannot sit at the absolute pinnacle of Ebelstein's high society. That is why she tells him not to doubt her resolve over such trivial matters. She knows exactly what is worth more than her own pride. Derek clarifies that she misunderstood. He simply meant she has to pay for his services. The girl instantly flushes red at his words. Covering her embarrassment, she scoffs that money was always a given, promising to pay whatever astronomical sum he demands. Since she is so deadly serious, he realizes he will have to unleash his most brutal training methods on her. Sometime later in the Rosier salon, Aisline notes that the next gathering will feature magic jewels again. And since she heard Alente has improved significantly, she must prepare thoroughly. The other two noble women present mention that they will also participate in the event. They laugh, teasing Aisline for being far too humble. Right then, Aisline spots Alente walking in. Aisline greets her, saying they were just talking about her. But Alente fires back that she could hear her voice from all the way down the hall. The other nobles whisper that it is best to diffuse the tension before things turn ugly. Alente sneers that Aisline indeed needs to train hard, since she has never lost a fight and is revered as the crown jewel of the Duplans. Aisline thanks her for the compliment, but counters that since her opponent is Alente, she cannot afford to let her guard down. Alente declares her absolute confidence, revealing she hired a new magic tutor who, despite being a commoner, boasts an incredible track record. Even better, his elite skills were verified by Aisline herself. Because the tutor she hired is none other than Aisline is completely caught off guard by the news. Alente mistakes a shock for fear, assuming Aisline is green with envy now that the man she lost is working for someone else. A single sweat drop rolls down Aisline's face. She congratulates Alente, calling her smart and reliable for making such a choice. She smiles and offers her congratulations once more. Alente accepts the praise, though she privately notes she didn't expect such a calm reaction. In that instant, Aisline flashes back to a past event. She remembers suggesting they request more lessons from feeling their progress had stalled and that his guidance would make a difference. But Diella brushed the idea, claiming she didn't need that much help since she was already someone of great importance. Asaline begins to analyze that past exchange with a cold, calm focus. Alente believes she has, thinking that once her rival realizes the gravity of losing such a tutor, she will finally break. She waits, expecting Asaline to finally show her rage. Instead, Asaline merely warns her that Derek's methods can be a bit extreme. Alente says she enjoyed the chat and says goodbye, announcing she must leave since today is the day of her first lesson. With that, she takes her leave. Asaline reassures herself that it is nothing to worry about, convincing herself that Derek is not the type to do anything malicious. From a distance, Denise watches the entire scene unfold while sipping her tea. She reflects on how, at the end of the day, everyone is just trying to make a living one way or over at Jaden's bar. Derek declares he is putting all distractions aside to focus on his next job. He finds it perfect that he doesn't need to travel all the way to the since he can handle everything right here in Ebelstein. Jaden warns him that he makes it sound too easy, reminding him that his new student might stand absolutely no chance of defeating Asaline. Derek replies that he already has a plan. If Alente can break past the 2-star level, they can use that advantage to tip the scales in her favor, even if she has to face Asaline. Jaden tells him to cut the optimism and demands to hear the actual, realistic plan. Derek says that is exactly what he wants to discuss, because he is going to need his help. On top of that, he adds that they will also need Pauline's assist. Jaden is stunned to hear that name. He asks if his friend is planning some kind of suicide mission. Derek confesses that, truth be told, the plan is already incredibly dangerous on its own. As if confirming his words, Pauline weeps and complains that the whole thing was far too risky. As they are dealing with professional con artists, she cries that they played her completely, stripping her of every last coin she had. By late afternoon, the scene shifts to Alente's estate. The protagonist announces they are kicking things off with real combat training. He explains they will repeat the battle 10 times to analyze the nuances of her magic, prompting a terrified Alente to ask if he is seriously throwing her into 10 consecutive rounds of combat. Derek replies that he needs to see how she performs in a real fight first. She complains that his teaching style is brutal, but shrugs it off, admitting she didn't hire him for boring lectures anyway. With that, he readies his magic and announces they are starting. A few hours later, she is gasping heavily for air. He commends her effort and grants her a 10-minute break, warning that they will dive into theory right after. She groans and asks if that's really it, claiming there isn't a single drop of mana left in her body. But he counters that if she pushes a little harder, she will definitely find some reserve energy. He points out that her form was off and demands she focus harder to conjure 10 more ice spears. He warns that if she can't even manage that, she might as well quit now because they still have 5 rounds left. He keeps pushing her, ordering her to cast spells until her mana is completely drained. Later, he says she worked hard for the day and dismisses her for dinner. He asks if she's alright, reminding her that quitting is always an option if she truly can't handle the strain. In response, she instantly forces herself. She asks if he really thought she would quit over a workout like this, scoffing that he made a massive deal out of nothing and that this is just standard effort. She snaps that he has no idea what she had to endure just to survive in high society. He admits that he might have underestimated her will. Standing tall, she explains she was only tired because she had just returned from an engagement, but promises that starting tomorrow, she will show him what she can really do. She even dares him to crank up the intensity of the training, but he looks puzzled and asks what she means by tomorrow. He clarifies that this is merely their dinner break. Stunned into absolute silence, she mutters that he has a very twisted sense. The next day, he stays on her case, ordering her to conjure 5 more magic arrows. He insists she still has energy left and needs to keep pushing. He adds that they are going for a run next because she still needs to train her mana manifestation. By the end of the day, the brutal training leaves her completely shattered. When he asks if she is okay, she tries to keep up appearances, claiming she is having a blast. He repeats his warning that she can quit if she can't keep up with the pace. But she fires back instantly, declaring this is all a walk in the park. Hearing her response, his expression turns dead serious. He says that since she seems recovered and full of attitude, they will begin a duel right now. 2 weeks pass and the scene shifts to the Rosier salon. Collapsing onto the table in sheer exhaustion, she asks Denise to wake her up. The second Aislinn arrives, and her friend agrees. She thanks her and mentions she has been completely off the grid lately due to this grueling training routine. Denise confesses she has one question and asks why she is pushing herself so hard. She ponders in silence for a moment before giving a direct answer. She is doing all this to win. Her friend is taken aback by the sheer determination in her voice, but she tells her friend to stay strong and promises to truly root for her. In that instant, she glances off to the side. She spots Aislinn walking through the entrance, flanked by 2 other noble girls. She mutters quietly that the girl has finally arrived. Aislinn casts a quick glance in their direction. She watches Alente warming up, stretching her neck. The nobles beside her pay no attention, chatting only about a new clothing shop that just opened and how they must visit it. Alente pulls her hood all the way up and asks if the other girls have already left. Embarrassed, she asks if they saw her lying on the floor like that, yet Aislinn's gaze remains locked entirely on her the whole time. Aislinn notes that she looks completely exhausted, wondering if her rival can actually keep up this brutal pace. Later, when she arrives home, the maid informs her that a gift has arrived from the Duplan family. It consists of several potions accompanied by a formal letter. The maid explains that the items were sent by Aislinn to help with mana recovery, but Alente wants absolutely nothing to do with it, and orders the maid to throw everything away. She demands they get those potions out of her sight right now. Right after, she demands they hurry up with the training preparations because Derek could arrive at any moment. The letter was an invitation to the young ladies of Salon Rosier, noting that winter is coming, and the snow has already begun to fall. It added that they hoped everyone would stay warm during the cold season. That is why they produced a massive quantity of premium, high-quality products. The message explained they were sharing these gifts with all the young noble ladies. It concluded by expressing hope that they would graciously accept the tokens. Outside the house, Derek appears, deeply focused on reading a spellbook. He remarks that she arrived early today, but Alente cuts him off, stating she has no time to waste and they should skip the pleasantries. She gets straight to the point and asks for his honest. She points out that they have been training for several weeks now and wants to know how her performance. Derek responds coldly, stating that giving up might also be a viable strategy. The girl hears this and is left completely speechless, utterly shocked. She complains that he really knows how to demoralize someone and hurt their feelings. Derek apologizes for being so blunt and insensitive, but Alente fires back, stating she asked for his opinion because her sole objective is to defeat Aislinn. She makes it clear she hired him precisely to achieve that goal, and she did not pay him to listen to advice about quitting. She warns him that, if he's going to keep talking such nonsense, he might as well leave right now. Derek then looks at her and asks if she truly believes winning is all that matters in this entire ordeal. This obsession with winning at all costs might end up ruining her own growth. She snaps back, calling that idea completely pathetic. She admits she used to talk trash about Aislinn behind her back, but that wasn't the real issue. She sees herself as nothing but a pathetic, envious, and horrible person. Pouring her heart out, she admits just how immature and insignificant she breaks down entirely, trembling as she weeps from sheer misery. She confesses she has no real reason to hate Aislinn, but she just can't understand why this ridiculous inferiority complex refuses to leave her alone. Deep down, Alente has always harbored a silent, burning self-hatred. At first, Derek thought it was just petty jealousy or competitive drive, but the person she hates most in this world isn't Aislinn. She hates herself, and this obsession with fighting has nothing to do with jealousy. Winning is the only escape route she has left from the suffocating self-hatred consuming her. Hearing this, Derek guarantees they will win no matter what. He promises he will do whatever it takes to secure her victory. Alente calms down and quietly agrees with him, at an open-air training ground. Alente's master steps calmly out of the carriage. He pauses for a moment, looking up at the clear blue sky. This place is the county of Belmiard. The Marquis of Belmiard immediately greets his guest, noting that Pelin has finally returned from Ebelstein. He acknowledges the long journey and invites the man to. The Marquis asks about his beloved daughter, whom he hasn't seen in ages, and Polini reassures him, saying she is dedicating herself even more intensely to her magic training. Tristan comments that he has never seen a young woman so talented, and that she will surely surpass him. Pelin hopes so, but warns himself that he absolutely cannot reveal she is being tutored by a commoner. Tristan mentions he will soon have to handle some business in Ebelstein. He suggests paying Alente a surprise visit and bringing her a gift. Pelin agrees, saying she will be absolutely thrilled by Later, at the entrance of a nameless dungeon on the outskirts of the city, Pelin warns that this plan is far too dangerous. He argues it makes no sense to drag a delicate young lady into a dungeon, but Jaden reassures him, saying Derek must have a plan. Alente asks if he seriously expects her to go in there, and the protagonist explains that this dungeon is extremely low level. The girl asks what she is supposed to do inside, arguing they can't just trespass like this. The protagonist counters that she needs real, brutal combat experience, promising that if anything goes wrong, he and his allies will step in instantly. She asks if he is actually serious, and the protagonist reminds her that the mock battle is only a few days away. He concludes that when time is running out, this is the most effective method there is. Alente is left completely speechless by his words, but there is no time to think as the group steps into the labyrinth. She demands to know what is happening. Derek warns her to stay on high alert, because even a low-level labyrinth is deadly, and a single mistake could cost them everything. His sudden, cold gravity catches her completely off guard. Suddenly Pelin senses something closing in. She warns the group that a horde of goblins is heading straight for them. Right behind them, Jaden spots a massive silhouette rearing up. It is an ogre. He claims he can handle the beast, but warns that his services will not come cheap. Derek snaps back that they will settle the tab once they survive this. In that instant, they face the darkness ahead, as the monsters begin to swarm. Alente freezes in sheer terror at the sight of the real, breathing monsters. Without giving them a second to breathe, the goblins charge. They lunge straight at Derek. Alente stands paralyzed, gripped by raw fear. The protagonist draws his main blade and orders Pelin to cover him. Channeling his energy, he charges headfirst into the enemy line. Pelin reacts instantly, letting loose a deadly arrow. The shaft drives straight through a goblin skull. In the same breath, Derek swings his sword in a brutal flash, cutting down another beast. Keeping his momentum, he unleashes a savage burst of fire magic to finish the job. Pelin keeps up the relentless pace, firing arrow after arrow. Meanwhile, the protagonist presses forward, carving through every goblin in his path. Alente watches the brutal carnage, unable to process the violence before her eyes. She glances back for a split second to check their rear. There, she sees Jaden standing alone against the massive ogre. Mocking the beast, he asks the monster how much it thinks the girl is worth. Enraged, the ogre swings its heavy club down with crushing force. But with a lightning-fast slash, Jaden severs the monster's hand. On one side, goblins are burned alive by scorching flames. On the other, they are ruthlessly impaled by arrows. Alente watches in horror, realizing they are slaughtering these creatures without a shred of hesitation. A cold shiver runs down her spine, as she realizes the same brutal fate could easily await her, and she vows to never let that happen. But suddenly, a suspicious rustle right behind her catches her off guard. Derek screams in desperate panic, warning her that a monster is lunging right at her. The goblin lunges straight at the girl. In that instant, panic grips her, and she thinks she is going to die right then and there. Derek screams at her to snap out of it and finish the monster off once and for all. Alente flashes back to the person she used to be. She remembers how immature she was, and how her own sense of inferiority always back in reality, the goblin leaps directly at her. She is sick of being that weak girl who did nothing but envy and badmouth others. Alente knows the time has finally come to make a stand. She begins channeling her close-range magic, and aims her ice spear dead at the beast. She came all this way to fight, and prove she can be someone better. Derek looks over to see what happens. Alente's ice spear impales the goblin's body. The mercenaries watch the scene in dead silence. The goblin's lifeless corpse crashes to the ground. She struggles to catch her breath after the intense physical and mental strain. Taking a deep breath, she looks over at Derek simply nods, acknowledging her good work. That was her first major step toward changing. Later, Derek sits on the ground to read the letter once more. Katia writes that it has been over 2 years since she left Ebelstein, and apologizes for taking so long to send news. She shares that she is teaching magic to Count Elbrister's daughter, and that the girl is so dedicated, it takes up all. Katia fondly recalls her days in Ebelstein when she used to teach him magic. She writes that of all the mags she has ever met, Derek is by far the most talented. She admits she is curious to see his current power level, and asks him to show her his magic when they finally meet again. The letter ends with the signature of his former teacher, Caddy a flameheart. Derek finishes reading and carefully folds the page. Alente points out that he has been reading that same letter for 2 weeks now. Every single time he explains that the letter was written by his. The girl teases him, saying his teacher must be a saint to have the patience to teach someone like him. Kadia agrees in all seriousness, calling her a truly wonderful teacher. Alente realizes he is far too dense to register her sarcasm. She gives up and tells him to just forget it. Derek changes the subject and asks how she is feeling about the duel in 2 days. Alente mentions she is feeling a strange sensation, one she can barely even explain, but determination fills her, because deep down, she knows. The next day, at the Rosier Hall, things begin to stir. Aisline chats calmly with some of her noble friends. Suddenly she spots movement in the distance. Derek is passing right through the middle of the crowd. She excuses herself from her friends for a moment, and heads straight toward. She approaches and says it is wonderful to see him. She mentions hearing that he is tutoring Alente in magic. Derek merely confirms that their paths crossed for a brief time. An uncomfortable silence falls between them, leaving both at a loss for words. Aisline remarks that he hasn't changed a bit, then asks if he isn't being too hard on Alente. Derek explains she heard he is no ordinary teacher, and the girl has been looking exhausted lately. Derek replies that she must be incredibly confident to be worrying about her own opponent. He warns her that no matter who the opponent is, one must never lower their guard. Aisline is taken aback by his words. As time ticks away, the young noble women wonder who will win. Though to everyone there, Aisline's victory seems like a foregone conclusion. Some even feel pity for Alente, who looks completely drained before the fight even begins. The hour of the duel arrives, and Aisline steps onto the arena with. The entire crowd is captivated by her beauty. Meanwhile, she offers a simple, graceful bow. On the other side, Alente enters the arena with a completely different stance. She steps forward, repeating to herself that she will win, no matter the cost. A completely new, fierce determination is written all over. From afar, Derek watches her every move. The two opponents finally stand face to face, locking eyes. Aisline breaks the silence, asking if she has been doing well lately. Alente counters, remarking that Aisline's composure is truly inspiring. Aisline immediately dismisses the She confesses she has never been this nervous for a duel in her. Alente suggests they get this over with. Aisline nods, bracing herself. In an instant, Alente unleashes her fire magic to attack, and Aisline counters, summoning a sphere of mana to defend herself. The two spells clash head-on in the center of the arena, unleashing a violent shockwave. Alente locks her focus and begins channeling her next strike. Aisline stares ahead, completely paralyzed by what she sees. Dozens of fire arrows shoot straight into the sky. In an instant, they multiply into hundreds, completely warping the battlefield. Alente makes it clear she is ready to win this fight by any means necessary. Her mind flashes back to her grueling training sessions in the dungeon. Derek had warned her then that raw magical skill alone would never be enough to secure victory. Instead, she must force a win through sheer mental fortitude. The plan is to push her mana pool to its absolute limit, exactly as she was trained. Once both of them run completely dry, the duel will be decided by raw willpower, not refined technique. She must unleash her magic in the most explosive, overwhelming way possible, dragging her opponent into a brutal war of attrition. Ultimately, whoever squeezes out the very last drop of mana wins. Though back then, Alente had asked what would happen if her opponent possessed far more energy. He assured her that, even then, she would still prevail. A person's mana capacity is determined at birth, and she has the blood of Belmiard running through her veins. Because of that, she only needs to believe in her. Back in the present, Alente remains locked in absolute concentration. Aisline reels in shock, wondering how her rival could have possibly become this powerful. Alente raises her hand to strike, and unleashes that devastating firestorm right at her. Hundreds of flaming arrows rain down on Aisline. Left with no choice, Aisline conjures a mana barrier to shield us. She grits her teeth to withstand the onslaught, telling herself that despite this display, she will still be the one standing victorious. But on the other side, Alente is fueled by the exact same conviction. The crowd watches in disbelief, wondering if this is truly her magic as her energy output surges to absurd heights. Aisline's mana shield begins to crack and shatter. Aisline reasons that as impressive as this burst of power is, burning through it so recklessly will leave her opponent empty in no time. But suddenly she senses a sudden movement right beside her. Alente is already charging straight through the thick smoke. Aisline rapidly readies an ice spear, knowing it is her turn to strike back, and fires the spell with lethal force at her rival. The spear tears straight through Alente, only to pass through empty air, revealing it was nothing but an illusion. Aisline freezes in sheer disbelief, unable to comprehend what is happening. That was a high-level illusion spell, and maintaining duplicates of that caliber demands an astronomical amount of mana. The real Alente appears right behind her, wielding a spear made of pure mana. Aisline spins around in a reflex, staring down the spell rushing straight at her. In that instant, she remembers Derek's absolute guarantee that the plan would work. The strategy was simple. Flood her vision with fire arrows, use illusions to disorient her, and close the distance to unleash ice spears at point-blank range. But there is a fatal flaw. Her opponent is no ordinary mage. She is leagues above the rest. The spell surges forward with terrifying speed, leaving almost zero reaction time. Aisline analyzes the battlefield in a split second as the attack closes in. Realizing there is no time to cast a protective shield, she has to make a brutal, split-second decision. She thrusts her arm out, focusing every ounce of her energy into. Without flinching, Aisline keeps firing her ice spear directly at her opponent. Suddenly, a sphere of highly concentrated mana manifests in her rival's hand. She unleashes that raw energy as an explosive thrust to force herself out of the way at the very last second. Alente strikes the ground, missing her target by a hair's. Aisline stands her ground, completely unscathed. The girl struggles to comprehend how anyone could evade such a blindingly fast strike. Then she notices the unwavering confidence written all over Aisline's face. In the end, it was a terrifyingly close call. At that moment, Derek's warning echoes in her mind. Never, under any circumstances, lower your guard against the enemy. Only now does she truly grasp the brutal weight of that advice. Her opponent's mana control and raw skill have completely transformed. Feeling the crushing pressure, she begins manifesting multiple magic circles directly on the ground. She decides to retaliate with absolute force, confident she can overpower her in a raw clash of firepower. Dozens of ice spears begin erupting from the earth. They skyrocket upward, forming a massive barrier reminiscent of the previous spell. The spectators watch in absolute shock as she conjures such an immense arsenal, without chanting a single word. Derek observes the entire spectacle from a distance. A smirk plays on his lips. She walks straight into his trap. Alente stares up at the colossal onslaught, genuinely impressed by the sheer scale of the magic. Aisline acknowledges that the girl has evolved at a terrifying pace in such a short time. Even so, Alente silently positions her fingers, priming her next spell. A massive sphere of fire, burning like a miniature sun, materializes right above the arrows. This line dares her opponent, challenging her to even try blocking an attack of this magnitude. Without a moment's hesitation, Alente unleashes the spell with everything. A devastating torrent of fire erupts from the giant sphere, tearing straight toward her. In that exact instant, a violent shiver runs straight down Aisline's spine. She spins around, completely stunned by what is unfolding before her. After all, her magic was just destroyed with absurd ease. She struggles to understand when it even happened, having failed to sense any flow. Then she wonders if it all took place at that exact millisecond, because the other girl had hidden an arrow right behind it, and in the next instant, that arrow clatters to the ground. Meanwhile, Alente keeps that smug smile plastered on her face. Aisline realizes she cannot predict her opponent's moves and has no idea what is coming next. In the crowd, Denise watches the spectacle, finding it utterly impressive. At this moment, Alente feels confident she can win, finally gaining the upper hand over Aisline. But Aisline knows she cannot win by playing this way. In terms of tactics and raw guts, she is currently a step behind Alente. That is why she decides to reset the match and start over. Derek raises his head to get a better look. He remarks to the others that this is exactly where the real fight begins. Aisline takes a deep breath and begins to truly concentrate. She starts unleashing her magic power, letting it flood the area. Alente cannot comprehend what her rival is planning, but suddenly, a crushing pressure of power hits her straight in the face. She is startled by this sudden force, which does not even feel like a normal spell, but pure, raw energy. Yet when she opens her eyes, she realizes she can no longer feel any energy in the air at all. It lasted only for an instant, but all the power surrounding her has completely vanished. This happens because during energy alignment, when a mage surpasses their own limits, they end up drawing all surrounding power into themselves. With that, Aisline begins to conjure a fireball. The attack swells rapidly, growing to the size of a miniature sun. In the end, Aisline has just broken through her own limit. She stands fully prepared to end this fight and claim victory once and for all. Now she wields the power of a 2-star fireball at her side. When it is all over, Alente lies on the ground, completely exhausted. Derek approaches with some water, telling her to drink, but Alente pours her heart out, confessing how deeply insecure she feels. She wants to know if she truly stands a chance of ever defeating Aisline. The boy replies with absolute certainty that she will win, or rather, one way or another, she will end up victorious in. The girls in the crowd wonder if that is really a 2-star fireball. Alente realizes things are not going as she expected. She looks at Derek, completely lost on what to do, but he shows absolutely no reaction. Panic sets in, and she wants him to drop that blank stare and say something useful. The fireball flies straight at her face. Alente scrambles to dodge the blast, desperately searching for a way out, only to realize she has none. Deep down, she already knows defeating Aisline is impossible. From a distance, Denise watches, analyzing the fight with intense focus. The entire crowd watches in utter shock, as Alente uses the exact same spell to pull off a desperate dodge. Even Aisline is taken aback by this. When the smoke finally clears, she is thrown back through the air, crashing face first onto the ground. Aisline is already exhausted from burning through so much mana, and the same goes for Alente, who struggles to drag herself. The Duplain girl can barely believe she managed to dodge the attack, using a technique she has only seen a single time. Derek knows that an unpracticed 2-star spell is nothing but a beast that drains all of your energy. Aisline's hand trembles uncontrollably, but she clenches her fist with fierce determination. Derek realizes she has acknowledged Alente's grit and talent, and is now ready to fight with everything she has. That is her way of showing respect for an opponent who is risking their life to face her. Alente realizes that is exactly what Derek is thinking. Aisline begins conjuring another fireball. Alente knows that if she can survive this single strike, she wins. Her body is already pushed to its absolute limit from the extreme. Regardless, she unleashes yet. The noble women in the crowd watch, slack-jawed, because this fireball is hurtling forward much faster than the first. Alente runs with everything she has, trying to escape the blast, but Aisline bends the trajectory of her magic at will. Alente barely evades, throwing herself to the side. The fireball grazes her, missing by a hair. Instantly, Alente leaps high into the air, using the blinding sun as cover. The glare leaves Aisline completely blind, unable to spot her opponent. Seizing the opening, Alente readies a devastating downward strike. She knows her rival cannot possibly predict the direction. Deploying a defensive barrier now would be nothing but a waste of mana. She watches, waiting to see how Aisline will react to the trap. In that instant, Aisline slams her hands onto the ground. She summons a wall of ice using raw, unbridled mana. Alente assumes her rival has already depleted her energy by casting and controlling that mass. A split second later, Alente lands hard on the ground. The desperate effort leaves Aisline completely drained, gasping for air. Watching from the sidelines, the protagonist realizes the battle is reaching its brutal end. Alente smirks, convinced she has cornered an opponent who is entirely out of mana. Squeezing out the last of her strength, Aisline still manages to fire 2 more ice, but suddenly, a new fireball begins to manifest right out of the ice wall. Alente freezes in sheer disbelief at the sight. Aisline's final desperate gambit is yet another high-level fireball. The moment she unleashes the spell, Aisline collapses to the ground. Alente doesn't even need to dodge as the wild shot sails wide, completely missing the target. She simply stares down at her fallen opponent, unable to mask a shock. Even on the brink of collapse, Aisline struggles to drag herself back up. She tells herself to hold on for just a moment longer, to try just one more time. And with that, she begins to focus the last remnants of her mana into her fingertips. Alente watches the desperate display in dead silence. Staring into Aisline's fierce, unyielding eyes, a harsh truth dawns on her. No noble lady in all of Ebelstein ever shone as brightly as this girl. But where there is blinding light, a dark shadow always lurks right behind, and that forgotten, pitch-black corner is exactly where Alente has always lived. Fueled by jealousy, She spread rumors that her rival was born with a silver spoon, utterly spoiled. She claimed people were only kind to her out of selfish interest. All she wanted was to push her rival to the edge, to make her snap and reveal her ugly, true colors. But what she sees before her now is something else entirely. Essaline merely offers her a smile. She looks like a gemstone that only shines brighter with every cut. That brilliance is so blinding it completely eclipses her. It binds her hand and foot, locking her in place, and dragging her deeper and deeper into an abyss of... Even so, she continues to prepare, sharpening her blade in the pitch-black darkness. She keeps telling herself that one day, things will change, that she will surpass her rival and prove her own worth, that she will crawl out of that abyss no matter what. And now, that moment is finally here. She wonders how Essaline can possibly look so elegant, calm, and beautiful, even with disheveled hair and a body covered in mud after rolling on the ground in front of everyone. She desperately wants to know how the other girl maintains such a calm face. It seems she simply doesn't care about keeping up appearances all the time. She is just herself, pouring everything she has into the present moment. The girls begin chanting Essaline's name, cheering her on. Alente begins to channel her magic. She wonders if she really stands a chance against Essaline, but she feels victory is within her grasp. She imagines herself falling right back into that same... And when that happens, everything will finally end. Because even if she wins now, in the end, she will only wind up right... Essaline pushes herself to the limit and manages to get... But Alente calls it a pity. She announces that her own mana has just... Essaline is left utterly stunned. Alente steps closer and admits she is incredible, but in the end, still cannot defeat. She declares she is forfeiting the match, but commends her on a great fight. The crowd erupts, cheering that she was the absolute best. Alente merely smiles at her, and Essaline is left lying there, gasping heavily for air. By late afternoon, the girls shower her with praise for successfully casting 2-star magic. But Essaline notices something strange. She spots Alente walking back down the... Derek senses her approaching him. Alente walks up and asks him if he didn't just see what happened. She assumes he must be shocked to see someone like her accept defeat, and asks if he saw the look on Essaline's face. Derek asks what kind of face. Alente says her eyes went wide and her mouth fell open, looking like she was about to give up right then and there. Ultimately, she found it hilarious to lose just to see that reaction, and thanks him because now she feels she has the upper hand over her rival. She demands his opinion, claiming the ending wasn't half bad and boasting that she is a fast learner. She orders him to say something instead of just standing there like a statue. But suddenly, tears begin to stream down her face. Derek just watches her in silence. Alente realizes she can't stop crying. She crouches down on the floor, complaining that she is far too old to be acting like... Derek tells her she worked incredibly hard and that there is absolutely nothing to criticize about her performance. Alente keeps her face buried in her hands. She pours her heart out, admitting she wanted to win so badly. But just as she was about to land the final blow, she realized that even if she won, nothing would actually change. She feels she would plunge right back into that bottomless pit she can never seem to escape. It is as if that pathetic life of hers is rooted too deeply inside her. Derek continues to listen to her breakdown without interrupting. Alente says Essaline looks so elegant even in that moment, and claims that if doubting oneself were a competition, she would beat anyone. Derek tells her that is not true. He explains there is absolutely nothing wrong with looking a little pathetic sometimes. The girl looks back, trying to grasp his meaning. Derek tells her that if she lacks the courage to accept that pathetic side of herself, she will never be able. Silence falls between them in the middle of the hallway. In that dark pit, where Alente felt trapped, she finally manages to stand tall. Now, she no longer feels chained to the crushing weight of her past. From a distance, Denise watches how it all unfolds. She analyzes the situation in silence for a few moments longer. The other girls announce they are leaving, and Essaline thanks them for their company. Denise praises her performance, calling the fight incredible and thrilling. But Eiley notes that her friend must have realized the truth as well. She knows perfectly well she wasn't the true winner of that duel. Denise only offers a subdued smile, staring at the floor. Essaline remains silent, at a loss for words. Ultimately, Denise says that when it comes to magical talent, Essaline is still the absolute best. But she knows that is not the case, believing there is a far more critical factor when it comes to narrowing the gap in skill. To her, the reason behind her rapid growth in such a short time is crystal clear. Everything points directly to Derek's presence. With that in mind, she lifts her head with absolute resolve. She calls out to her maid, Daisy, and demands to send an urgent letter to the main estate immediately. She makes it clear that she needs Derek by her side right this instant. Meanwhile, back at his estate, Raymond brings up Dressift Wolftail, trying to make sense of why a 6-star travel pass is in Ebelstein. Valerian replies that the motive remains a mystery, though it seems the deal was fast-tracked as a direct reaction to their own movements. Connecting the dots, Raymond suspects that the Count of Bellmeier's arrival in Ebelstein must be linked to the matter. He reasons that for a master of the searching arts who possesses the power of clairvoyance, there must be a massive reason behind this move. Just then, Valerian informs him that a letter arrived from Eastline requesting they find her a magic tutor. Raymond shrugs it off, asking why they cannot just hire any random tutor. But Valerian explains she insists on Derek, except he is currently at the Bellmeier estate, tutoring Lady Alante. Valerian suggests sending the butler to spearhead the negotiations and resolve the issue, but Raymond says there is no need for that. He explains he must go to Ebelstein personally regarding Dressift anyway, so he will handle this matter himself while he is there. Later, at the Bellmeier estate, Alante announces she is taking some time off to rest. She says she needs to step away from her studies and everything else to clear her head. She then asks if he will continue working for the mercenaries, and Derek confirms he will. Suddenly, she stomps hard on his foot. She steps in as close as possible, staring him down from inches away, and asks if he would return if she ever summoned him to teach her magic again. Derek smiles and says he absolutely would, though he doubts there is anything left for him to teach. Alante scoffs, asking where this uncharacteristic humility is. She senses that her training hell is finally over, admitting it has been a brutal, exhausting road. Back at the mercenary tavern, Pauline leaps to her feet the moment she sees who is walking through the door. She calls out to Derek, and Jaden follows suit right after, sighing in relief. The protagonist simply replies, entirely calm, saying he is finally back home. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Tristan's carriage barrels down the road. He rides in silence, watching the landscape flash by the window. And back at the mansion, Alante lies asleep in her bed, completely at peace. Woken by a persistent knock at the door, she snaps in irritation, grumbling that she already declared today her day off and wants nothing to do with lessons. But the maid replies that it is urgent, and that she really needs to go outside and see. Too lazy to move, Alante stubborn resists and orders the maid to tell them she simply is not home. She opens the door with a scowl, repeating that today is her day off. Tristan beams at the sight of his daughter and remarks that it has been a long time since they last. Without a second thought, Alante slams the door right in his face. Inside, she panics, trying to understand what the hell her father is doing there. She cracks the door open, announces she will change real quick and be right back, and immediately slams the door shut once more. Later over tea, Tristan comments that Lady Duplan must have been a highly challenging opponent. Alante agrees, stating she learned a great deal from her, and her father asks if that mercenary is really that good of a teacher. If so, the best move is to keep the man working exclusively for them in Belmiard. The girl is thrilled but warns him that the vassals will complain, only for Tristan to cut her off, saying there is nothing he wouldn't do for her. He tells her to relax and leave everything in his hands. Sometime later, in the labyrinth, the silence is shattered by the echoes of magic blasting through the corridors. Pelin screams in desperation, warning that the monster is right behind Derek. The protagonist spins around to find the goblin charging straight at him. He begins to focus magic in the palm of his hand to strike back, but in that instant, he senses something is deeply wrong with his energy flow. Even so, he fires the spell directly at the goblin. He tries to force a 3-star spell right at the moment of the attack, and attempts to conjure a fireball with all his might. The spell spirals out of control, and the massive explosion ends up engulfing. Desperate as the smoke clears, Pelin screams his name. Later, at Jaden's bar, the owner asks why Derek almost killed himself, while Pelin demands to know why he tried using a 3-star spell against mere goblins. Derek explains that he felt a strange blockage, very similar to what he experienced when he reached 2 stars. Dressed overhears and tells him not to get anxious just because he is stuck at the same level. He explains that the young man shouldn't force things like this, especially since the path of nature magic is all about seeking a natural flow. Naturally, such advice rarely works on headstrong mags like him. Derek cannot sense a single trace of mana coming from the man, but he knows full well that this is the legendary first-ever 6-star Seeker mage. The old man concludes by saying that, if they have any decent booze around, they'd better bring it out, because the journey was long and exhaustion has set in. Meanwhile, at the Duplan estate, Diala trains alone, concentrating all. She prepares to unleash her magic immediately after. A sharp ice arrow begins to rise from the ground. She clenches her fist tightly, attempting to manifest another right, but mid-process, the energy flow begins to falter and fluctuate strangely. The spell spirals completely out of control and shatters into pieces. Diala drops to her knees on the ground, crying out in sheer frustration. Raig looks down at her, muttering that he thought she had finally grown up, but she is still throwing the same old tantrums. Even so, he points out she managed to summon 5 spheres, noting that this progress is likely all because of Derek. Diala snaps back instantly, claiming it is nothing but her own raw talent and has absolutely nothing to do with that selfish bastard. Raig then reveals that Azaline is planning to hire Derek as a magic tutor. He adds that he heard at a recent ball that Lady Alente is also desperate to keep Derek on her payroll. Diala is left bewildered, demanding to know why everyone is suddenly fighting. Raig argues that the man turned a wild rebel like her into a proper young lady, so it is no surprise he is in such high demand. He remarks that it would be much better if Derek chose to work with Azaline. That way, they might actually run into him again down the road. Diala flares up, furiously asking whoever said she wanted to see that guy again. Raig completely ignores her outburst, noting that rumors about Derek must have spread far and wide by now. He only hopes the crowd of competitors fighting over him does not grow any larger. Later, in a gritty downtown tavern, Dress downs a massive mug of liquor in a single gulp. Derek watches him closely, wondering what a high-caliber mage is doing in a rundown place like this. Dress lets out a heavy sigh and asks for the young man's name. Derek introduces himself, but asks, highly intrigued, how the man already knows. Dress tells him that, if it is not too much trouble, he would like to have a private word with him elsewhere. The protagonist sees no reason to refuse and accepts the invitation on the spot. Once outside the city limits, Dress remarks that Derek's magical talent makes no sense. Admitting he has never seen anything like it, he explains that the boy's raw abilities defy all normal standards. Because of this, he wants to know the driving force behind his desperate efforts and what he hopes to achieve through magic. Derek gives a simple answer, stating he has no grand ambitions. He just felt compelled to seize the tiny spark of talent he was given. He explains he was merely curious to see exactly how far he could push him. Dressed is caught off guard, left speechless by such an unfiltered, honest response. He notes that, for a commoner dreaming of reaching the absolute peak of the magic world, his current level is still far too low. With that, he offers to help Derek break through his limits, asking if he will accept the proposal. In that instant, Derek finally recognizes the man's face. He is the legendary 6-star mage. He was a commoner who reached 2 stars in adulthood, hit 3 stars after starting a family, and ultimately became the spiritual pillar who founded the Ivory Tower to protect commoner mags. But in the exact year he achieved the coveted 4-star rank, disaster struck. He lost his entire family in a brutal, tragic. That devastating loss completely shattered Dressed, forcing him to abandon his life and vanish off the face of the earth. Meanwhile, in a lavishly decorated room, a subordinate reports to the Count that Dressed has gone into hiding, and the commoner mags have finally fallen silent. The Count sneers in contempt, muttering that those low-born rats always turn coward in the end, and that commoners have no business craving magic. He finishes with a cold warning. If Dressed ever dares to show his face again, they will put him down permanently. He plans to end Drest's life right then and there, but the Count freezes in sheer terror at what he sees. In that instant, his subordinate's head flies through the air, and the one who did it is Dressed himself, standing right before him. The Count tries to run, but loses a leg in the blink of an eye. Immediately after, the exact same thing happens to his other leg. Unable to stand, he collapses onto the floor. Desperate, he begins to beg for his life, pleading that he regrets everything, but the noble runs out of time to speak and loses his tongue next. Now, all he can do is scream in agony amidst the bloodbath. After that day, Dressed spends 30 long years on the run from the imperial family and the rest of the nobility. Everything changes when Dressed surpasses the 5-star limit and becomes a 6-star mage, making the imperial family realize that having him as an enemy is far too dangerous for the empire. Consequently, they decide to sweep the matter under the rug, acknowledging his revenge is justified and granting him a title of nobility just to save face and protect their own power. That is how Drest secured his noble title, rising to the top solely through raw power and his absurd magical talent. Derek wonders if he will truly get the chance to learn from such a powerful man. In the end, he has absolutely no reason to refuse an opportunity like this. Meanwhile, in the noble district of Ebelstein, Duke Veltus warns that if Duplain wants to advance through the north of the Belkos Peninsula, he must tread carefully around the labyrinths in the White Zone. He even offers to send some of his own knights to assist in the mission, if necessary. But the Duke scoffs, dismissing those knights as nothing more than low-rate mercenaries. That response leaves Veltus even more furious. He fires back, saying it must be quite difficult to manage such a vast territory using only private soldiers, suggesting it might be better to give up control of that region altogether. The Duke refuses to back down and begins to vent his own rage right then, and Tristan steps in to break up the fight, declaring the meeting over and suggesting they go see their children, since the youths have travelled all this way. Raymond mentions hearing that Alente fought on equal footing against Azaleen. Tristan confirms this, noting that although she lost, the girl is finally showing her true talent. He guarantees that with a bit more training and a real instructor, she will surely surpass Aslein's level. Raymond asks if he is referring to He claims that if Derek agrees to become Aslein's instructor, Alente will never be able to hold a candle to. This leaves the other count completely, and Tristan doubts that will happen because his bond with Alente is too strong, but Raymond counters, saying he is a man who does not make decisions based on emotion or personal ties. Veltus watches the bickering and wonders who this Derek could possibly be to leave the two of them so desperate. He decides he will order Denise to investigate everything about this man as quickly as possible. Later at the tavern, Jaden greets the Count with utmost politeness, but he quickly tenses up, failing to understand the reason behind this sudden, unannounced visit. That is when Tristan asks him directly if he is the commander of that mercenary group. Tristan takes a sip and explains he came in person because he received no reply to the letter his butler sent, forcing Jaden to lay his cards on the table. He reveals that Derek actually vanished a few days ago, and they are also. Jaden explains that just a few days ago, Derek announced he was turning down all jobs, and then simply vanished into thin air. Tristan wonders if Duplain or Veltus already snatched the guy, but there is absolutely no intel on it. Meanwhile, in the lands of Duke Veltus, Denise calmly eats an apple. She observes and analyzes yet another document on her desk. She asks when the letter arrived, and the maid replies it came early today, sent by the Patriarch with utmost urgency. Denise realizes he was in a rush to appoint Derek as her tutor, taking advantage of the mercenaries' currently tanking value. She lets out a long sigh, finding this entire situation a massive pain, especially since today is an incredibly important day for her. It is the day she has been anticipating for a long time. Finally, the new book by the great author Rayleigh, The Lady Submits to the Duke's Cold Blade, is hitting the shelves. She knows if she does not handle this now, it will only annoy her even more, so she firmly calls for her maid, and commands her to pack her travel clothes immediately because she is heading out, far away, in an isolated cave outside the city. Drest and Derek sit, locked in deep meditation. The mage commands the boy to close his eyes, spread his mana like a thin mist, sense everything around him, and then draw it back. Derek closes his eyes, and tries to do exactly as instructed. Slowly, he begins to expand his mana into every corner of the cave. Drest explains that this is the absolute basis of detection magic, and at the first level it only serves to sense nearby danger. At the second level, one can track locations and sense mana, and at the third level the user can see through disguises. He says that at the fifth level, it is possible to read minds and speak with the dead, and at the 6-star level, one can even. Derek gets curious and asks about this ultimate ability to foresee things. Drest explains that he saw the future, and that is why he sought out the boy, because he desperately needs his help. Derek wants to know what terrible thing is fated to happen to him. The mage says he needs to know a man named Valerian. He reveals the man is the eldest son of the Duplain family, and before he even comes of age, this youth will dabble in dark magic and necromancy. Because of this, Derek must end his life as soon as possible. Derek's expression darkens instantly, turning deadly serious. He asks why the man would do such a thing and what he plans, but Drest warns he cannot share any more details. He explains that the future is sensitive, and if they know too much now, things might shift in a chaotic, unpredictable way. But he warns there is one more thing he can reveal beforehand, and reveals that Derek is destined to die. The old man asks why he is not surprised. Derek replies that he never said it was a certainty. A smile spreads across the old man's face at his words. He stands up, declaring that he has no desire to see the boy. That is why he will find a way to keep Derek alive. But to survive, the young man must become incredibly strong. With that, the old man raises his palm. He unleashes a massive beam of magic straight into the sky. As he does, he repeats that the boy needs to become truly powerful. Instantly, the clouds shrouding the moon begin to vanish. This entire spectacle happens with a mere flick of Drest's energy. Derek tries to hide his reaction, but he cannot help but stare in sheer awe. Meanwhile, a carriage arrives in the city of Ebelstar. A moment later, Denise steps down from a carriage. Everyone on the street gapes, utterly stunned by her beauty. She announces she is going for a walk and tells the driver to rest. Then, she calls out to her maid, Bella. She demands to know why everyone is staring. She pauses, trying to make sense of the reaction. She wonders if the reason for all the attention is actually quite simple. Could it be because she is just too beautiful? Bella stares back at her, completely deadpan. But she quickly smiles and points out that Denise's room is always a disaster. She barely bathes, and she lives buried, so seeing her dressed up like this is a rare miracle. Bella teases that her dressed-up look is somehow even worse, and Denise dryly replies that her maid has a great sense of humor. Bella urges that they must hurry before another family recruits Derek first, but Denise tells her to relax, as they are still ahead of the competition. After all, that mercenary rejected every single job offer and went into hiding. She knows he is not the type to turn down coin, which means something far more valuable must have entered his life. For a youth with such high-level magic, if there is something more precious than gold, it can only be one thing. Either he found a legendary grimoire, or he encountered a powerhouse master, because only that would justify him abandoning work and rejecting every contract. Yet she remembers he left the Duplain mansion by choice, despite knowing there is no better place to train in magic. This means he definitely found a place, or someone, even better than the Duplain estate. She keeps walking, turning these possibilities over in her mind. Just then, Bella announces they have finally reached their destination. The two stop right in front of the mercenary tavern. Inside, Jaden welcomes the customers, but he freezes in absolute shock the moment the girl steps through the door. He says he didn't expect to see a young lady in a place like. He also explains that he has no idea where Derek is, and that 3 groups have already come by looking for him just this morning. But she cuts straight to the chase and asks if a man named Dressed Wolftail has been there. Jaden tries to play dumb and act like he has no idea. Even so, the girl simply thanks him for his answer and doesn't push any further. She leaves the tavern and orders Bella to immediately check the carriage transit records. She wants this search done directly at the city's coachman guild. Curious, Bella asks how her lady was so sure Dressed had been there. Denise replies that it was obvious, since that mercenary left a 5-star mage mansion of his own free will. She explains that he takes magic very seriously, yet still chose to abandon a powerful mage of that level. She also reveals she knew a 6-star mage was on his way to the city, and decided to take a shot in the dark just to see, and in the end, the old man fell right into her. She adds that this probably happened because he is an intelligent man. Bella looks at her and remarks that her lady is usually quite foolish most of the time. Denise plays along, saying she sometimes gets tired of being such a genius. Bella keeps teasing, refusing to leave her lady in peace. She questions if they will actually manage to recruit the man if they find him, since both the Duplan and Belmiard families are also after him. Denise replies that that is the easy part and guarantees she already has a perfect plan in mind. She intends to set an irresistible trap for him. She says he is just a hot-blooded young man and that it would be impossible to resist the charms of a beauty like her. But Bella ruins the mood, reminding her that her direct competition is none other than. Denise gets irritated by the comment and doubts the other woman is prettier than her. But Bella ignores the complaint and announces that she has finally found the records they were looking for. Later, when they finally meet inside the cave, she looks at him and asks if he really is Derek. The young man simply nods, unwilling to share many details. Denise flashes a warm, friendly smile. She says it is a relief to find him and that she came all this way because she wanted so much to meet him in person. She confesses she wanted to talk to him, even if only for a brief. Derek responds with sarcasm, saying this is indeed a very pleasant conversation. Bella has to struggle hard not to burst out laughing right then and there. Meanwhile, Denise begins to get irritated by his coldness. She takes a deep breath and grips the hem of her dress tighter. She says she has lost count of how many times she dreamed of this meeting and that she heard he is an excellent mage and a great instructor. She finishes by saying she would love to take lessons from him and that it would make her very happy. Derek asks why she is speaking so theatrically, wanting to know if she is rehearsing for a play. Bella tries to hold in her laughter, but she cannot help herself and bursts out laughing. Denise realizes that this little act of playing the shy, helpless girl will not work on him. So she decides to tell the truth and yell. She reveals that she felt an overwhelming pressure, watching the duel between, and as one of the 3 jewels of Rosea, she felt like she was being left behind. She confesses she grew anxious, fearing she will end up forgotten if the others keep evolving, while she remains stuck in the same place. That is why she desperately begs him to help save her from this situation. She gets so close that he can surely feel her breath, and she thinks his heart must be racing. But without giving a damn, Derek simply steps away from her. The girl is left utterly confused, wondering what on earth is going on. Derek says he does not buy her story, especially since he heard she does not even care about magic. He points out that she mistook him for a monster, cast an ice spear carelessly, and was completely clumsy. Her raw strength is great, but she lacks coordination, which only proves she barely ever actually trains. Bella silently agrees and gives a thumbs up, glad that he spoke the truth. Derek then decides to give her a direct piece of advice. He warns her that, in front of someone who takes magic seriously, she must never lie about her true intentions, because many would consider that a grave insult. After hearing that, the girl is left completely speechless. Derek makes it clear that he does not know what she wants from him, but he knows it is not magic, and he does not accept requests from those who hide what they truly. She begs him to wait, but he cuts her off and tells her to find another tutor more suited to her needs. Denise is left standing alone in the middle. She has no idea how to react, digesting the fact that she was rejected so coldly. Now outside the cave, she complains that she finally figured out how that man actually works. She complains that he surely has no interest in women, but Bella disagrees, saying he is just a decent, proper man. Denise tells her to use her head, arguing that she is gorgeous, wore her best makeup and expensive perfume, and yet he still rejected her. But the maid advises her to calm down and focus on how to send him a letter. She notices that Denise is clearly trembling with rage inside. Denise takes a deep sigh and confesses her real motive. That rejection ended up bringing out her competitive side. Later, near a campfire close by, Bella asks if she is really going to be fine with all of this. Denise replies that if she gives up now, another noble family will step in and snatch, so she needs to win him over as soon as possible. Bella tells her not to push herself so hard and to take it easy. Denise says she knows her friend always ends up suffering because of her selfishness, but warns that this favor is extremely important and truly hopes she can count on her help. She asks her to bring, when she comes tomorrow, the 4th volume of that book about the Duke who falls for the commoner. Bella lets out another sigh, growing even more annoyed by the situation. The next day, Derek continues to meditate peacefully in the exact same spot, but Denise approaches, carrying a large box. She places the box on the ground right next to him. Derek asks what it is, and Denise replies that it is nothing. She says she cannot do much, but that this will help him focus on his magic training. He warns her that doing things like this will not change it. The girl replies that it is fine, and that she feels she is already improving but in reality, she thinks that if he is actually human, he will eventually warm up to someone who dedicates herself this much. Derek accepts the gift and thanks her, but he makes it clear that even though he accepts it, he still will not be her instructor. The next day, the girl shows up again with food and magic crystals, but he keeps pushing her away. And the exact same scene repeats day after day. Furious at the constant rejection, Denise loses her temper and punches the wall. She complains that he is a selfish leech, and that after she has been so nice, he should at least pretend to soften up. In that instant, Bella runs in and warns them that they have a serious problem. The head butler of the Duplain family is heading straight toward them. Denise tells them to hide for now to see what is going on. Moments later, the butler approaches the camp. Watching the scene from afar, Denise finds the sheer number of people strange and wonders if they are heading to war. She remains hidden, paying close attention to every detail of the conversation. Derek tells the butler that it would be a great honor to become Lady Ashling's magic instructor. Hearing this, Denise burns with rage at being cast aside. The butler asks if he is ready to leave with them immediately, but to everyone's surprise, Derek says no. Denise, listening from afar, is shocked by his answer. He explains that he will only leave after finishing his own training, although he still does not know exactly when that will be. The butler tries to push, asking if he would change his mind if they increase the payment. But Derek refuses the offer and apologizes. He says that at his current level, he could not help Lady Aisling much, and he refuses to teach magic half-heartedly. Hearing this from her hiding spot, Denise lowers her head and begins to reflect on his attitude. Meanwhile, at Aisling's mansion, she receives the news and gets incredibly excited to learn they finally found Derek's location. The maid explains that the head butler went to speak with him yesterday, and Aisling complains that she should have been told sooner as she wanted to extend the invitation herself. She immediately orders them to prepare everything and gather the family's fastest soldiers. After all, she wants to personally welcome her new teacher. Sometime later, back at Denise's camp, from spending so much time out in the freezing cold, she is already starting to catch a cold. She shivers, completely frozen to the bone. That's why she announces they are heading back home tomorrow morning. Bella points out she is smart, knowing exactly when to fold and give up. Denise grows serious, muttering that Bella must think she is a fool. In the past, being stubborn always got her what she wanted, but this time she has no desire to push. When it comes down to it, the whole ordeal has simply left her. But Bella explains that the mage does not care about anyone's lineage. He seems to operate on a far deeper, more important principle. Denise stares at the ground as memories begin to resurface. She remembers him saying he needed to learn more before he could ever teach her. She even recalls the look on his face during the duel between Alente and Ash. Denise wonders what drives him to go this far. She wants to understand why everyone here is so brutal. Back in the cave, the stones scattered across the ground begin to float. Derek's mana begins to flood the entire space. But in an instant, he senses someone approaching. He immediately cuts off his magic. Denise steps forward, offering an apology. She apologizes for interrupting his training. Then she asks if she can sit down beside him. Derek looks at her, noting that her eyes seem different. Denise gazes upward in silence for a brief moment. She apologizes for being a constant nuisance and promises to stop bothering. Derek thanks her for everything and wishes her luck in finding a great mentor. Denise replies she does not want another mentor because she actually hates magic. She confesses it was all an act, a political play, and she only tried to keep him close because of his sudden fame. But since his pride is too stubborn and his mind is set on Aisling, she is leaving. When Derek asks why she hates magic, Denise begins to explain. She admits she liked it a little in the past, but even that was a lie. She only craved the praise, and magic was just a tool to get it. She studied relentlessly while everyone hailed her as a prodigy, until one day a sudden thought hit her. She began to wonder what she was doing all of this for, and just like that, she quit and never looked back. Derek remarks that sooner or later, anyone gets tired of empty praise. Denise smiles, glad he was actually listening, since she expected to be talking to herself before leaving. Derek merely wishes her a safe journey. This only irritates her further. She abruptly stands up, declaring that she envies him. She envies how he never questions the value of hard work, knowing with absolute certainty that he will become a great mage. Derek stares back at her in silence for a few moments, but she turns away, warning him that if they ever meet again, he had better at least say hello. The next day, Aisling advances on the location with her army. Denise watches the massive mobilization from afar. She stares for a few seconds before turning to leave for good. Back home at dawn, she wonders if Aisling was truly rejected. She tries to figure out if it is simply because his training is unfinished, which would be a far cry from a real rejection. Bella tells her to stop worrying about it, and she ultimately agrees. Yet, she still wonders why he acts as if he is the only person in the world who can use magic. Right then, Bella informs her that a guest has arrived to share a meal with her, opening the door to the dining hall. She greets her father good morning, but when she opens her eyes wide, she finds Derek eating there, completely unbothered. That man has absolutely no business being in this place. She can only wonder what on earth happened this time. The previous night, deep inside, Derek trains in total absolute concentration. Everything aligns with the flow of mana. Now only one final push remains. All of that mana is about to converge into a single devastating point. The strain is so immense that he breaks out into a cold sweat, and in that instant, his concentration reaches its peak. He slams his hand against the ground, and unleashes his magic. The stalactites on the ceiling suddenly begin to tremble. Along with everything else around him, Derek gasps heavily for air, completely exhausted. Drest warns him that if he keeps this up, his body will collapse. It would be a complete waste to die right after finally learning what he needed. And that it is high time they leave this place. Derek finally unlocks the 3-star tectonic shift. Later, they sit gathered around a crackling campfire. Drest states that he has nothing left to teach him for now. He repeats his previous warning, reminding the boy that mediocre talent is a death sentence. From here on, he must think for himself and decide how far he wants to push his limit. Derek asks him where he is. Drest merely replies that he is heading out for a breath of fresh air. After walking a short distance into the woods, he calls out to his disciple Derek and warns him to watch his back around Kohala. In an instant, he vanishes into the pitch-black forest. Derek realizes this is a final departure, and that warning keeps echoing in his mind. At the Duke's estate, Veltus expresses his delight that Denise took the initiative to bring the magic tutor here herself. Denise brushes off the praise, stating she only did her duty. Veltus notes that the tutor must have his reasons for rejecting Duplain's request, and promises to offer whatever support. Derek clarifies that he wants nothing more than the agreed reward, and only accepted the deal because of Denise's persistence. Veltus agrees that she is indeed remarkable, claiming no other woman on the continent can match her. He begins sharing embarrassing stories from her childhood, fueling Denise's irritation. The girl sharply cuts her father off, and suggests that they should now discuss the lessons, just the two of them. Once the two are finally left alone in the room, Denise demands to know what he is still doing there, and Derek calmly replies that he is just enjoying his tea. She presses him on why he lingers when their business is already concluded. The protagonist expresses his gratitude for what happened in the cave, noting that she helped him secure a massive advantage. Denise repeats that it was a purely political move, making it clear she has absolutely no desire to learn magic. He admits that, to be blunt, hearing that leaves a bad taste in his mouth. He finds it frustrating that she dismisses magic so quickly, without even knowing what real magic is. Denise falls silent, pondering his words for a moment. She concedes that it must indeed be annoying for someone of his standing to hear her disparage magic. But the protagonist counters that he simply finds it a waste. She knows nothing of this beautiful craft, yet she harbors so much bitterness and resentment. He warns her that he has no intention of letting things end this way. Denise is taken aback by his intense tone. She finds the entire situation absurd, instantly regretting poking the beast. Meanwhile, back at Asseline's estate, she stares thoughtfully out the window. She stares out the window, remembering her encounter with the professor the day before. Derek was blunt, telling her straight to her face that she has nothing left to. He explained that her foundation is already too strong, and that she would be much better off finding an instructor from her own. In the end, he even offered a sincere apology for not being able to help. Asseline was stunned by his response, but she simply accepted it and looked down. She knows his decision is final, and that his words weren't just empty praise to stroke her ego. Lost in thought, she reaches her hand out toward the window. The truth is, she always believed that following that rigid path was the only right way, but now she realizes she was just living a life completely devoid of freedom. Suddenly, a knock on the door cuts through her thoughts. The maid enters, announcing the arrival of an important letter from the main family. The letter states that Valerian's departure ceremony is scheduled for next week. Asseline decides she must prepare an outstanding gift, since this is his very. She resolves to head to the shopping district, but suddenly, one of the living room chairs snaps in half for no reason at all. The broken pieces of the chair fly far from her, scattering across the floor. Meanwhile, at Denise's house, she rants about Derek being completely clueless for telling her to her face that he sees no value in magic. She questions why he tries to force that view on others, just because magic is useless to him, saying that if Denise feels that way, she shouldn't force others to read the silly romance novels she loves so much. Denise fires back instantly, using the professor's exact argument to defend her books. Bella simply replies that she honestly finds absolutely no joy in those romance stories. Denise continues to complain, recalling how that man cured Duplin's headache, won Alenti's admiration, and even rejected Asseline. Bella tells her to go to sleep and stop whining, but Denise insists she listen. She explains that if she fails to make any progress despite having such an incredible teacher, everyone will brand her a complete. She says she can't just fire him using her authority, when her only desire in life is to lie down and read in peace. Bella then warns her that if she fires Derek, the allowance she uses to buy her romance novels will be cut off immediately. Denise falls silent for a few seconds, digesting the threat. Moments later, she begins tossing and turning in bed, consumed by frustration. She pulls the blanket over her head, hiding her face, unable to accept the situation. She wonders if all of this is actually real or just a nightmare. The night before, while Derek was still talking with Dre, the old man offered a crucial piece of advice, noting that it would be highly intelligent to maintain good relations with the three great noble families, but he made it clear that Derek does not need to pledge absolute loyalty to any side. The secret is to walk the fine line between the three houses, keeping them in constant tension, as that is the only way to protect himself and guarantee his safety. Derek listens intently to his master's advice in silence. The next day, Denise decides to ignore her problems and spends the entire day sleeping in her room, except Derek suddenly bursts in, banging on pots and pans. Denise jolts awake in a panic and starts screaming. She demands to know what the hell this noise is and asks if he has completely lost his mind. Derek points out the sun is already high, and since she would not wake up, he had to take drastic measures. She snaps back that this is no excuse and that she is still in her pajamas. He says he already noticed that and orders her to get changed and be out in 5 minutes. With that, he turns on his heel and leaves the girl alone in her room. She is left utterly shocked by his sheer audacity. Once outside, she chases after him, ranting that there is a limit to being rude and that everyone knows weekends are meant for resting. Derek agrees, stating that no one should overwork themselves on the weekend. Confused, she asks why he is causing this chaos so early, but he explains that this is just about maintaining a basic routine. He tells her that if she is part of the great trio of the Rosier Salon, maintaining basic discipline even on days off is only natural. Denise fires back that he is the one making up what is natural, and makes it crystal clear she does not agree with any of it. But Derek does not care and simply shoves a piece of paper in her face. Denise quickly skims the document as he explains. It is an official contract signed by Grand Duke Veltus himself. He warns her that he is her boss now, as the Grand Duke has handed over all authority regarding her magic training to him. The news leaves her completely terrified. She protests that she never heard of this, but he ignores her completely and starts mapping out the day, starting with a quick breakfast followed by an evaluation of her search magic. After that, she will have to relearn elemental combat magic from scratch, followed by physical training in the afternoon, and mana control lessons at the end of the day. She complains, reminding him he just said they would not overdo it because it is the weekend, and Derek replies that he explains that maintaining even the absolute basics is already. At that moment, she realizes with absolute certainty that this man is a complete lunatic. A short distance away, Bella is hanging laundry on the clothesline. Suddenly, a massive racket comes rushing her way. It is Denise running for her life, desperately trying to keep up with Derek. The girl begs for help the moment she spots Bella, but the maid only smiles, highly amused by her suffering. This only makes Denise cry harder out of pure exhaustion. By afternoon, she is forced to spend hours buried in complex magic books. Derek continues to drill her on highly advanced, complicated concepts, and as night falls, they are out running yet again. In the end, she collapses and vents, saying she is going to die like this and praying that idiot mercenary rots in hell. Bella points out that it is not clear who is actually going to end up in hell, but Denise fires back that her friend has changed completely since meeting that man. She complains that Bella is now just like him, a cold, heartless animal with no feelings left, but Bella responds that without acting this way, you end up losing your life. Denise complains that the guy was clever enough to sign a contract directly with her father, making it impossible to fire him, so Bella suggests she speak with the Grand. The girl stands up and says they will make up a story that Derek is lazy and incompetent, demanding that her friend back her up. Bella refuses on the spot. Denise glares at her friend with a completely cold stare. The maid explains that Denise knows very well that is impossible, since Derek was the instructor she herself brought in, and now every other family wants to hire the guy. The girl is forced to admit that is true. Her father might let some things slide, but he would never let anyone tarnish the family's honor. Later, Denise steps out of the bath wrapped in a towel and goes straight to her room. She celebrates that she will finally have some quiet time to read her books. Suddenly, Derek appears and asks if she is already. Startled, Denise asks what he is still doing there since he should have left, calling him a training addict, but the protagonist replies that he gains nothing from overdoing his exercises. He explains he only stopped by to leave tomorrow morning's schedule. The next day, Denise wakes up completely wrecked. She complains that it feels like she has been in this torture for 3 years, but Bella corrects her, saying it has only been 3 days. The maid reminds her that she has an appointment at the Rosier salon today, so there will be no training. Denise decides to hurry up and leave before that lunatic shows up again. Right then, Derek appears out of nowhere and asks if she rested well, terrifying the girl. He announces that today's schedule consists of theory lessons and basic physical conditioning. But she puts her foot down and says she will not train today because she has an important social commitment she cannot. Derek surprises her by saying he already knew that, so he will wait until she is finished. He even tells her not to rush and to take as much time as she needs. Denise grows pensive, finding it strange that such a ruthless guy is making things easy for her. She knows he realized she is only going to this gathering to escape training and waste time. Even so, she thinks these annoying commitments actually come in handy once in a while. Meanwhile, Derek remains standing there, maintaining his usual cold expression. Later on the way back, Denise is completely exhausted. Bella comments that her lady was full of energy during the meeting, but now looks like she is being dragged to her death, and Denise completely agrees. After all, she knows very well that Derek is waiting for her at home. That is when an idea suddenly hits her. Denise begins to concentrate magic in her hand, and a startled Bella asks what she is trying to do. The girl reveals she is going to use magic to flip their own carriage and fake an accident, just to have an excuse to skip training. Bella lets out a deep sigh of despair at how far her lady's madness goes. She grabs the girl tightly to stop her from doing something so reckless. The moment they arrive home, they run straight into Derek talking to one of the farmers. Denise is completely baffled, wondering what on earth is going on. She finds it incredibly bizarre to see him chatting with a man in such a warm, friendly manner, but Derek quickly notices her standing right behind him. He turns around and tells her that since she is back, she should go straight to the study. Because tonight she is studying theory on her own. Denise is taken aback by his sudden reaction. She even thanks him for the break, glad he won't be breathing down her neck today, but she still finds his behavior highly suspicious. Afterwards, she keeps watch on him through the window, trying to figure out what he is up to. She sees the protagonist training hard alongside one of the knights. Later, he even shows up in the kitchen helping the cook. And then he appears watering the garden plants alongside the maids. Denise mutters that this is all highly suspect, and that something is definitely off. Bella asks what she means, and Denise explains that Derek has been talking to the staff far too much lately. She admits she doesn't know what he is plotting, but reassures herself that Bella would never fall for his act because she is loyal. Bella immediately agrees and tells her not to worry, because she loves being by her side more than anything else. Yet, the very next day, Bella is already looking at the young man, completely spellbound. Denise watches the entire scene unfold from the window. She realizes instantly that even Bella has fallen for his charm. Infuriated by the sight, she screams Bella's name at the top of. Afterward, Denise goes to confront Derek, demanding to know what he thinks he is doing in her house. She makes it clear that this mansion is hers, and every single person working here belongs to her. The protagonist replies that he doesn't understand why she is stating the obvious, prompting Denise to demand he stop winning over her staff and focus solely on teaching her magic. He explains that while he is indeed getting closer to the servants, he swears there is no hidden agenda behind it. Denise fires back, demanding to know his real goal right now, because this entire situation is driving her crazy with anxiety. The protagonist explains that he needs to get to know her better, but not the elegant lady from the rumors. He wants to know the real Denise. He says that teaching isn't just about passing on knowledge, and the more he understands who she truly is, the better he can tailor the lessons to fit her. Curious, she asks what the staff has been saying about her, wondering if they told him she is far more beautiful than the other local nobles. Derek smiles and says they all mention she finds everything a drag and has zero motivation to train. He adds that he also heard she always steps up when things get serious, and that despite her cold exterior, she is incredibly caring toward her servants. He tells her that Seb said he considers her his own daughter. The cook revealed that even though she complains about the seasoning, she always insists on buying the most expensive ingredients, and the knights shared that when they fell ill, she was the one who bought their medicine. Even Bella revealed that Denise took care of her when she was sick, and almost died of cuteness seeing her mistress sleeping right beside her in bed. Hearing all of this, Denise is deeply moved, realizing just how much everyone there truly loves her. Embarrassed, she deflects and claims they are only saying that to be polite, as she was simply doing her job. But he does not stop there, adding that he uncovered something else about her. He reveals he heard rumors of her being a highly talented writer. Startled, she feigns ignorance and demands to know what he is talking about. He explains he knows she is penning a novel titled The Arrogant Sir Robane, and confesses he actually enjoyed reading it. Panic strikes her as she wonders who leaked her secret and how Derek managed to get his hands on her book. He continues reviewing the story, mentioning he deeply related to the character Trace's past, though he found Robane a bit exaggerated. He admits he understands a subtle romance, but dedicating 7 whole pages to describe the character's wild masculinity is far too much. Overwhelmed with sheer mortification, she lets out a shriek and bolts from the room. He watches her run, convinced he did not lie, as he truly needed to get to know his student better. A faint smile plays on his lips. Ultimately, this also serves as a way for him to understand where her strengths lie. The next day, he encounters her and offers a morning greeting. He asks if she stayed up all night writing again, suggesting she should really get some sleep, which only provokes an irritated snap from her. He calmly states he is referring to the very book she is writing. He teases her further, adding that the graphic description in the Volume 9 balcony scene was quite the surprise. Desperate to wake from this living nightmare, she rushes off to practice her magic immediately. He merely smiles, deeply satisfied that his plan to provoke her worked perfectly. Meanwhile, at the Belmiard estate, Alente notes that it has already been about 10 days since her friend hired the magic instructor. She asks how things are going and if her friend has managed to adjust yet. Denise confirms she has, but adds that if hell itself exists, it must look exactly like her current life. Alente realizes without even looking that her friend is going through a brutal time. So she changes the subject, asking if her friend has heard the latest news. Intrigued, Denise asks what she means. Alente reveals that Diala's debut is just around the corner and she will be attending the next routine meeting with Island. Hearing this, Denise's mind drifts to Diala, knowing how incredibly difficult she is to handle. Over at the Duplain mansion, Diala grumbles and questions why she must visit the Rosie. The butler patiently explains that she must attend next week's meeting as part of her debut preparations. She falls silent for a moment, weighing her options. She finally agrees, deciding to go solely because there is someone at that place she desperately wants to see. During their meeting, Diala tells Island she still fails to see why she must join the Rosier Salon. She scoffs, declaring that aside from the two of them, the rest of the members are utterly worthless. Island instantly disagrees, countering that many of them are highly cultured and incredibly charming. Diala gazes up at the sky, pondering those words. She confesses she was curious about life outside her mansion, but social circles never interested her, since everyone there only speaks Fossids to please others. Island looks down at her sister lying on the bed. She calls out her name, and tells her to count her blessings because the Duplain name guarantees them easy entry into high society. But things are entirely different for those without status, since the social scene is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them. That is why they shouldn't look down on a privilege they received without effort, but instead, accept it with gratitude and work hard. In fact, joining the salon is a great experience because it offers a chance to meet all kinds of people. Diala listens and says that if her sister sees it that way, she will think of it. She adds that she was already planning to visit at least once anyway. Island hears this, not quite understanding what her sister means. Diala suddenly decides to change the subject. She announces that now that her basic education is complete, she is getting her own manor in the Ebelstein region, and taking advantage of this major move. She says she wants to hire that village mercenary to be her private magic tutor. Island replies that she knew her sister was thinking about this, but reminds her that Derek is currently tutoring Denise, and it would be incredibly rude to steal the girl's instructor. Diala dismisses the issue, saying she was only thinking about it as a hypothetical. Even so, Island remains slightly uneasy about her sister's reaction. Meanwhile, back at their home, Denise gasps for breath in the middle of a brutal training session. Derek praises her progress, noting that she has improved significantly. He explains that she should now be able to intercept enemies even when they are completely out of her line of sight. The mercenary takes a deep breath before continuing, and remarks with a smirk that magic is simply pure fun. Hearing that only terrifies Denise even more, but Bella agrees instantly, saying that it really is incredibly fun. The protagonist explains that feeling the flow of mana shift and detecting the slightest differences is the absolute best part. To him, honing the power you were born with to reach greater heights is the true essence of magic. Denise stares at him, thinking the man is an absolute monster. Bella continues to agree, adding that the entire process is a pure thrill. Denise snaps, demanding to know what part of this could possibly be thrilling when she is completely exhausted. Bella laughs and says the real fun is watching her suffer like that. The revelation leaves Denise even more shocked and traumatized. The protagonist stands up immediately after. He sighs, disappointed that she still hasn't grasped the true joy of magic. Denise fires back instantly, asking how she is supposed to feel any joy in such a pathetic state. The protagonist admits his mistake, stating that the intensity of the training was probably not suited for her level. A spark of hope ignites in Denise's heart, thinking that things are finally about to get easier. But the protagonist immediately cuts her off, declaring he is actually going to ramp up the intensity just so she can taste the thrill of real achievement. Panic strikes her instantly, leaving her even more terrified. She throws herself to the ground and desperately clings to the protagonist's boots. In absolute desperation, she begs him to take it easy, lying through her teeth that the training is incredibly fun and that she loves magic more than anything else in the world. The protagonist simply shakes her off and says he has no time to waste. He walks away, entirely focused on drawing up an even more brutal training regimen for her. In the grand hall, the noble girls mingle and gossip about various matters. Diella enters the hall moments later, scanning the room. She feels a surge of disgust watching those girls act like they are all flawless, beautiful, and noble. Diella walks through the hall, looking at everything around her with pure disdain, until something in the corner of the room catches her eye. She spots Denise sitting right there in front of her. Diella's expression shifts instantly. She flips her hair with mock condescension and prepares to make a move. She walks over with determination and approaches. In a cynical tone, she calls out to Lady Denise of House Velt. She immediately introduces herself formally as Diella of the prestigious House Duplain. Denise is utterly confused, trying to figure out where this conversation is going. Though suspicious, Denise introduces herself in return, and Diella replies that she knows. Diella announces that the useless pleasantries are over, and she wants to ask a direct question. Irritated by her arrogance, Denise tells her to just spit it out, promising to answer with all the patience she can muster. Diella gets straight to the point, stating she knows Denise is working with Derek. Denise finds it ridiculous that the girl is asking something everyone already knows, but she decides to confirm it anyway. Diella hates hearing the confirmation and turns her face away in anger. Denise gets even more annoyed seeing the girl roll her eyes at her like that, but Diella hides her annoyance and remarks that Denise seems to be doing quite well for herself. Denise fails to see the irony and wonders if this girl is blind or just out of her mind. But then, a sudden realization hits Denise, making her eyes light up. She realizes Diella is dying of envy because she is working. On second thought, this brat isn't a problem at all. She is a godsend. Denise looks at her, realizing Diella wants Derek all to herself. She sees a golden opportunity to escape her training hell, but Diella warns her to stay sharp because Derek is unpredictable and could change his mind at any second. Denise agrees immediately, saying that much is obvious. She adds that, in the end, Derek's own choice is the only thing. Diella is left bewildered. She expected to get under Denise's skin, but the girl doesn't seem to care. Diella plays her last card, declaring that, while Denise might know him well, House Duplain can offer him a far better deal. Denise replies that she thinks it's a great idea, since the other family can take over Derek's training instead of her. Diella is left in shock, realizing Denise didn't hesitate for even a second. Denise offers to set up a direct meeting with Derek, but Diella simply turns her back and refuses. On her way out, Diella wonders what Denise did to win Derek over so completely and have such absolute confidence. But deep down, Denise is actually begging for Diella to just take the guy away. Later, back in her room, Denise sits on her bed, finally feeling much calmer. She closes her eyes to focus and plan her next move. In the end, all she and her little angel want is for Derek to actually go to the Duplain house. She hopes the girl likes the letter she sent since it's an offer impossible to refuse. In the letter, she writes with absolute honesty that she wants to get rid of Derek, while the other girl wants him for herself. That's why she proposes they settle this with a magic. Denise says she will wager Derek himself, so Diella can bet whatever she wants, since Denise's actual plan is to lose on purpose and force her family to let him go. She signs the letter sincerely, on behalf of Denise of House Velta. Meanwhile, at the Duke's mansion, he asks how things went in the White Zone. Valerian explains that a total sweep will take some time, but they didn't return empty-handed. Raymond comments that such a feat is impressive, and wants to know immediately what they found there. Rake answers that while clearing one of the labyrinths in the White Zone, they discovered a magic weapon, but Valerian cuts in to say that the real problem lies elsewhere. The object was a massive staff that appears to be a tool used for necromancy. The Duke takes off his glasses, stunned by the revelation, and demands more details on the matter. That night, as heavy rain pours outside, Denise curls up in bed and clutches a blanket. She weeps and begs Derek to go easy on her, crying out that she has reached her absolute limit. She complains that she has absolutely no manner. The girl screams with every ounce of strength from the sheer agony she is in. She begs that psychopath to stop this once and for all. In that instant, she wakes up and realizes it was just a horrific nightmare. She sits up in bed, confused, wondering why that dream about training with Derek felt so incredibly real. She asks why Bella didn't wake her up, but the maid replies that she decided to let her sleep in because she looked utterly exhausted. Denise panics, crying out that demon Derek will destroy her for being late, but Bella tells her to calm down. She explains that Derek requested an urgent day off because his captain got injured, and hopes it's nothing serious. Denise freezes, caught completely off guard by the unexpected news. But she quickly plays it cool, walks back to her room, and says she will be skipping breakfast. She steps into her room and slams the door shut. Alone inside, the girl stands still for a moment, letting the reality sink in. And then, she starts jumping for joy, screaming that she is finally free from that monster. It is only for a single day, but she is finally free, and it has been a long time since she... This sense of peace and comfort is absolute perfection. She wonders what to do first, with a massive pile of novels waiting for her in the but she cannot focus so soon after waking up, so writing might be the better choice. Meanwhile, in another part of town, Derek steps into the atmosphere inside is heavy and grim. One of his friends appears to greet him as they usually do. Sensing trouble, Derek heads straight to Jaden's room. He finds the bar owner battered and blooded, with Pelline tending to his wounds. Guilt washes over Derek, as he regrets arriving too late to help. Jaden remarks that he never took such a beating even during the war, claiming it only means he is getting old. But Derek counters that even if the White Zone is dangerous, it shouldn't be enough to bring down someone like Jaden. The bar owner explains that this only happened because he ran into a sandworm in the labyrinth, and even though it is not his first time facing such a the monster lunged out of nowhere, catching him completely off guard. Even so, Jaden insists that despite losing an arm, he still came out ahead by killing the creature. He also warns that the Duplain family has been frequenting the White Zone, and other nobles are bound to show up soon. Because of this, he is certain they are all searching for something incredibly important, but Jaden warns that unless he is leading an entire army, Derek must stay far away from that place. He says he could not bear to see his friend die in that lawless wasteland. Back in Denise's room, she finds herself surrounded by books, yet she simply cannot focus on any of them, no matter how desperately she wants to enjoy her reading and relax. As she looks down at her hands, she realizes these days, every single thought crossing her mind revolves around magic. Ultimately, training and controlling her mana has become her only true escape.